Majority Report with Sam Cedar, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
It is Friday, May 15th, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live, steps and steps and steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. It's Casual Friday, folks. Joining us on this Friday, executive editor of the American Prospect, David Dayen, will be here. Reporter from Mashable and host of Doomed and Majority Report producer emeritus, Matt Binder, will be joining us. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi forces the vote on the crappiest messaging bill ever. Donald Trump pushes for mass suicide as he loses support in the Rust Belt. And Alexander Burr steps down from the Intel Committee in the wake of the FBI investigation into his stock sales. Meanwhile, Kelly Loeffler is asked for documents about her stock sales. Senate reauthorizes expanded surveillance powers because it's not like Bill Barr will abuse them. And Mitch McConnell concedes there was an Obama administration pandemic plan, whatever. Amazon ends its $2 an extra bucks per hour for hazard pay because it was inhibiting Jeff Bezos from making more than $30 billion so far during the lockdown. It's only $500 million a day. Meanwhile, defying a court order, the EPA says we're not going to have limits to fetal and infant neurotoxin in rocket fuel being dumped into water. And lastly, the Texas Supreme Court says let debt collections and evictions resume. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I don't know what my daughter has now just texted me and said, you have music on. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But it's a madhouse here, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm sure it is in your home. And I certainly hope that it is in your home. Hold on. Now she's, I don't know. Milo, are you listening to the show? Is that what's going on?
That was your pre-show Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, I was listening to your show. Stop talk. Oh, Jesus. Don't use those language. Okay. She said I was S-talking her on her show. 14-year-old girl using that kind of language. There you go.
Rings true, though.
What rings true?
I agree with Milo.
All right. There you go. Matt's kissing Milo's ass. Well, I don't blame you because it's probably just a matter of days before she's hosting this thing, and I'm permanently retired. But be that as it may, we are here. It is Casual Friday. Welcome. I am wearing a soft-collared shirt. In fact, it is it's a new shirt that I purchased because I need I need some summer wear. And it's exceedingly hot in this closet. And so we're going to have to figure something out about that as well. Hope you're well. Hope you're staying safe. Of course, around the country, there are various states that are opening up, some by the decision of their governors, some by the decision of the Supreme Court in like Wisconsin, say, where they say it's going to be time for you to all go out, go to the bars, and hopefully, avoid somehow from catching this disease that's going around that is killed over 80,000 of your fellow Americans. And there are hearings going on. It's been one of the complaints I have about Congress. We'll talk to David Dayen a little bit about that, but there are hearings going on. This one is in the Senate. I think it was now 2 weeks ago, I had mentioned, or at the very least headlined, and maybe touched on, the director of the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, which is a governmental agency tasked with developing vaccines and whatnot. Dr. Rick Bright is now the former director of BARDA. He was removed because he wouldn't get with the program when it came to hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine or whatever it is that Donald Trump was hawking as a miracle cure. Here he is testifying to the Senate committee saying that winter is coming and it's not going to be good.
Without could be the darkest winter in modern history. First and foremost, we need to be truthful with the American people. Americans deserve the truth. The truth must be based on science. We have the world's greatest scientists. Let us lead. Let us speak without fear of retribution. We must listen. Each of us can and must do our part now. On Tuesday, Dr. Fauci delivered a message in a voice that is clear and trustworthy as he encouraged us to act with caution as we return to our daily lives. We should listen to him and other scientists sharing their expertise. While waiting for a cure and a vaccine, which I believe will come, there are things we must do immediately. We must increase the public education about the basics: washing hands, social distancing, appropriate face covering. They're simple but critical steps to buy valuable time until there's vaccine. We need to ramp up production of essential equipment and supplies, including raw materials and critical components. Shortages of these increase the risk of our frontline healthcare workers, and they deserve the best equipment to protect themselves. We need to facilitate equitable distribution of essential equipment and supplies. And finally, we need a national testing strategy. The virus is here. It's everywhere. We need to be able to find it, isolate it, and stop it. We need to have the right testing for everyone who needs it. We need to be able to trace contacts, isolate, quarantine, and appropriately while striving to develop a cure. Initially, our nation was not as prepared as we should have been, as we could have been. Some scientists raised early warning signals that were overlooked, and pages from our pandemic playbook were ignored by some in leadership. There will be plenty of time to look back to assess what has happened so we can improve. But right now, we need to focus on getting things right going forward. We need a comprehensive plan that everyone knows and everyone participates in.
You know, what strikes me about this is the kind of testimony you would have expected to hear in February or January. Not after 2 months and 80,000 deaths to hear that we have no plans for anything regarding this. None. And to the extent that plans exist, and they certainly do, I mean, there's a 65-page pandemic playbook. There's, I don't know, tens of pages of documents the CDC has put out in terms of guidelines and how to, all of it's being ignored. Consciously, purposely ignored. It's insanity. We've got a couple more clips of Dr. Bright. We'll play those later in the program. But it's nuts right now what we're seeing in terms of our failures in government, both in terms of like the executive branch and frankly, and we'll talk more with Dayen about this, from the legislative branch, at least from a political standpoint and an oversight standpoint. But what can you do? I don't know. Meanwhile, Majority Report is made possible today in part by Skillshare. The first 500 people go to skl.sh/Majority Report 8 are going to get a free premium membership to Skillshare for 2 months, 2 whole months. I've talked about Skillshare many times. Online learning community offers thousands upon thousands of cases, almost any topic you can imagine. Drawing, painting, photography, video editing, web design, running a small business, playing the ukulele. In fact, I was saying to Matt before the show, I was like, I cannot get rid of this buzzing. I've got 2 different systems set up. I have done everything that everyone has suggested to me. I have switched computers. I have changed the power outlets that they're involved in. I have put those little magnet things on the cables that are going in. I have switched out my second mixer. I mean, I suppose I could switch out the main mixer, but I'm not going to do that. I've switched different cables. I've gone from stereo cable, whatever. I'm not going to go through all this. But then it occurs to me, like, I need to take some classes on audio engineering. And I went over to Skillshare just right before the show. I did this. And they have, I don't know, more than a dozen, maybe 2 dozen, more than that, 3 dozen, more than that. They've got hundreds. I don't know hundreds, but they've got a ton of classes that I can take on learning how to mix some audio and some basic understanding of this, which one would have expected I would have done after 15 years in this business. But what are you going to do? Anyways, I'm sure all of you can benefit from learning new skills, getting better at old skills. I don't know. The great thing about Skillshare, it's all like in bite-sized pieces too, little chapters. So you can take chapter 1 and chapter 2 and then come back to it later. All classes are, I think, under an hour, more or less. Membership to Skillshare costs less than $10, is $10 a month. Less than $10 a month. And it gives you access to their entire library classes. But the first 500 people who go to skl.sh/Majority Report 8 are going to get a free membership for 2 whole months. I put up the link under the YouTube description here, and I put it up on the podcast description as well. Meanwhile, also, you want to better yourself? You want to catch up on maybe some history books that you haven't read? I don't have the time to read. I've talked to you about this. There's a whole set of a category of books that I just want to get the main points of. And Blinkist is the app that allows me to do this. It takes the best key takeaways, all the need to know information. They do it from thousands of nonfiction books, how-to books, history books, political books, boils them down in just 15 minutes. So you can read them or you can listen to them on your phone. You can listen to them on your tablet, your web browser, whatever it is. You need to get the important takeaways from a book. You're busy because your kids are gone insane. You're locked inside here and you don't have time to actually sit down and get access to all this stuff. Blinkist is the way to do it. I've said many times, my favorite one is the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. That was really helpful to me. And I would not have in a million years, with all due respect to Mr. Ferriss, read the entire book. Those books, there's a couple of books they have on how horrible Republicans are by Republicans. I checked that out. Everything Trump touches dies by Rick Wilson. Also, there's another one. Jared Diamond has some books about how societies fail, and I'm interested in looking at that. They've got Turning Points for Nations in Crisis by Jared Diamond. I interviewed him a long time ago, years ago on the Majority Report, but this is a good way to catch up on the latest book. With Blinkist, like I say, you get unlimited access to a massive library of these condensed nonfiction books. And for a limited time, Blinkist has a special offer for just our audience. Go to Blinkist.com/Majority Report. You try it for free for 7 days. You save 25% off your new subscription. That's Blinkist, BLINKIST.com/Majority Report. Start your 7-day free trial. Save 25%. Sign up now at Blinkist.com/Majority Report. Again, that link will also be in our podcast description and YouTube description. And lastly, there would be nothing better now And it's not going to happen for my kids. Sorry, Milo, if you're listening to this right now. But one of the good things that's happening is this big pet adoption boom that's going on right now. Shelters are being cleared out, and people are getting dogs. They're getting, mutts, dogs they don't know much about. Well, Embark's breed and health test is the best way to get to know your dog, whether it's old or new for that matter. The thing about Embark is it teaches you not just about what your dog's breed is, who their cousins are, but it also, most importantly, tells you about the genetic risk factors that the dogs have for any type of proclivity or propensity to get any type of disease. Embark can identify over 250 breeds. It screens for 175 genetic health conditions. So over 50% of dogs are either at risk or a carrier of a genetic disease. Embark will help you learn their history. What do you do with that information? Well, you go to your vet, and your vet tells you this dog needs this kind of food. Or you tell your vet this, and your vet is looking out for different cancers or different diseases that they may not have known. They probably knew broadly what breeds are sensitive to these things, but they may not have known what breed your dog was. We have now been advertising for Embark for, over a year. And so I'm starting to get feedback from listeners on this. I already told you a story about listener Aaron. They've got a dog, Gregor, who is Aaron's brother's best friend. And his brother has had, socialization issues over the year. And Gregor, their dog, became a lifesaver for this kid, like a social lifesaver, as it were. And knowing Gregor's potential problems with his genetics in terms of feeding him, and just knowing stuff about Gregor has been a huge boon for that family. Kelly, she looked into Edie's genes. She tested clear for all 171 genetic health conditions they screened for, and she's not a carrier or risk for any of the genetic diseases they test. There's also a full clinical trial report. Great news. Most importantly, I can provide the report to her vet, which will provide so much information with Edie's health as she grows up. And then we got a tweet from Melancholy on the MRIM looking at all the cousins of her dog from Embark. It's nuts. Right now, Embark has an exclusive offer just for our listeners. You go to embarkvet.com now. Use the promo code majority. You save 15% off your dog, breed, and health kit. Visit embarkvet.com, embarkvet.com. Use the promo code majority, and you'll save 15% today. All right, quick break, and then we're going to go talk to David Dayen in just a moment. Be right back. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. On the phone, it is a pleasure to welcome to the program David Dayen. He is the executive editor of the American Prospect. David, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Do I sound okay?
It's not the greatest, but I'll muddle through.
All right. Well, fair enough. You're a real trooper. I don't know why that's the case, but hopefully it'll be better next time. David, so you have a piece in the, well, you have a couple pieces I've been reading, frankly, and I should just say, let me just, I think I pay this compliment to you every time you come on, but the American Prospect is killing it these days in a myriad of different ways. And so thank you for the work you're doing there. I frankly get a lot of the information that I talk about on this program from there. You have a great piece about Joe Biden. Well, I want to get to that in a moment, but let's talk about the HEROES Act. Can you, for a moment, explain to me what in the world is the idea behind this thing? Like, it's a messaging bill, but it's sending out a very bad message, and I don't know who it's sending it out to.
I am completely baffled by this bill. When it initially was conceived, even Nancy Pelosi herself said this is a bill to set a marker for negotiations. This is a messaging bill. This is, this represents what we want to happen. You always hear politicians say, this is not the bill I would write, but it has some good things in it and I'll pass it. Well, this is the bill I would write. Like, if you're Nancy Pelosi, this is the bill that she would write. That's what a messaging bill is. This is, here's everything I want, and then we'll go into a negotiation with Republicans and see what we get. But this is supposed to be the bill I would write, right? And yet it is like completely muddled with things that look like compromises with Republicans, things that look like compromises with special interests, trimming of sales to hit, this is the weirdest part, to hit like a budget number to make sure it's not too expensive when it's a $3 trillion bill. The idea that you're trying to save money by clipping coupons on buying of a yacht, essentially, on a $3 trillion bill is insane. And so it's like everything and nothing at once. And it reflects the total incoherence of Democratic policy. I mean, if you sat Nancy Pelosi down and asked, well, what do you want out of politics? If this bill is any indication, I'm not sure she could tell you. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And that's why it has all this mixed messaging in it. And that's why it's going to be very difficult for swing district members to justify it, because there's so much in this bill that is going to be demagogued in November, no matter which way they vote on it.
Right. I'm completely flummoxed by this. The only explanation I can come up with this is, and the student loan thing is a perfect example of it, but also the COBRA stuff. And just the idea of ending the COBRA stuff randomly on January 21, 2021 also seems just like, this is sort of like the classic, like the food sucks and the portions are too small type of situation. And the only thing that occurs to me is that the central agenda here is to project that we're doing stuff, but to make sure that really nothing happens. There is no implications of this. Like we have, the Republicans are out there. It seems to me they are full bore going for some structural change, right, to exist after this is over. And the Democrats are just like desperately trying. And by Democrats, I just mean, Nancy Pelosi and a handful of her friends, because nobody else is allowed into this process, it appears, right, are desperately trying to make sure that there is no progressive structural change that comes out of this. That seems to be their primary agenda. Make it look like we're doing something, and make sure there's
the fact. But I mean, just the fact that you think that there's a primary agenda here, I just disagree with that. I don't think there's any agenda here. It's slap a bunch of words onto a page because I don't have any vision for what I want to accomplish, and try to please every element of the caucus at the same time, which inevitably creates contradictory messages that infuriate the rank and file. I mean, there is no coherence here. $1 trillion for state and local governments, rent cancellation or rent forgiveness, $100 billion for rental subsidies. There are some, things that are very important. Maybe they're not structurally important, but they're very important to get us through this incredibly difficult period. And then there's like, well, we saw the score from CBO, and we decided that student loan thing was too generous, so we're going to scale it back so that we can say the bill is $3 trillion instead of $3.1 trillion, because that 3% of the total cost of the bill would really take us into fantasy territory, I guess, from 3 billion to 3.1. It doesn't make any sense.
But that's my point, that it's not about the dollars, because if it was about the dollars, right, you would jettison, let's say, the SALT stuff. It's not about the dollars. It's about they're afraid to.
If it was about the dollars, you wouldn't be subsidizing COBRA instead of putting people on Medicare.
Exactly.
That is demonstrably much more expensive.
Exactly.
By about 50% per person than the alternative. So it's only, some of this is just straightforward special interest corruption. I mean, that's certainly one of them. The fact that they're going to allow trade associations to take these paycheck protection program funds, these forgivable loans. There's a report by the Democratic Policy Center showing that existing members in Congress have taken $191 million in donations from trade associations. So that's just straight up corruption. They're just like, okay, our future employers or the people that fund our campaigns, you can get free money from the government. Why not? So some of it, I mean, this is my point. There's things that are necessary. There's things that have been tailored to please one random, swing state district member in the Midwest or something. There are things that are just favors and giveaways of special interest. It's not coherent. It's just incoherent.
I mean, I still contend that the coherence is when you look at like the COBRA thing, when you look at the student loan thing, the one message I get from that, and I'm not saying there aren't these other conflicting messages and whatnot, but the one message I get from that is cost is not the issue. The issue is creating a plan that could actually go forward after we're done with this. Like, they don't want the benchmark of allowing these things to exist, even on paper, right? In the same way that, like, if they were to vote expand Social Security in the Senate, we're all looking at that as obviously the Democrats were not in power when they passed that, but it's a marker. If they say in this bill, expanded Medicaid is better than publicly financing COBRA, then why isn't that the case a year from now? If they say loan forgiveness is doable under a pandemic, why isn't that the case a year from now? And I think that this is like just the one sort of guiding principle, to the extent that there is one, is just we got to make sure that there's nothing in here that we're going to have to try and unwind after the fact if Joe Biden becomes president.
I don't know. I think by virtue of seeding the public with trillions of dollars, that's going to have a long-term impact. By extending unemployment insurance that gives low-wage workers at the low end not just 100% replacement of their salary, but 150% replacement of their salary in some cases, that's going to be important. That's important for worker power.
Yeah.
In terms of when they come back. So I think that, it's like the Federal Reserve said, hey, Congress really has to spend a lot of money. And then Pelosi says, oh, now it's okay. It's like she has this brain that only thinks in these very narrow terms and doesn't have any kind of strategic vision. So she's basically saying, well, the Fed told me it was okay to spend money, but the special interest told me that they wanted this, and my swing district member told me that this was too ambitious, and I'm also trying to please this side, and I'm also trying to please the Congressional Black Caucus by making more minority businesses available for PPP. It's just transactional, siloed, ridiculous Democratic thinking that has no strategic outcome or opportunity. I don't think it's as conspiratorial as you think, because I think that the Democrats are too stupid to be that conspiratorial.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I don't think they're thinking beyond the 5 feet in front of them.
No, but I include that element, that principle, in the litany of ones that you just did, which is I've got to make these people happy and I got to make those people happy. It's just not happening when it comes to progressives. I mean, that's the one, like, she shuts down Jayapal's proposal. She shuts down the loan forgiveness. She shuts down expansion of Medicaid. I don't think that's just a coincidence. I think those just fall into the bucket of, it's bigger than just turning a spigot on and turning it off. I mean, it's going to be the easiest thing in the world after the coronavirus to say unemployment benefits are not going to include 110% of what you got paid. That's going to be the easiest thing in American politics to dial back. What wouldn't be easy would be things like loan forgiveness. What wouldn't be easy.
I mean, first of all, I'm getting like every fifth word here. This is
all right. Let me call you on a different.
I'm going to with Bane from Batman. Like,
I set that up that way. Let me call you back on a different device. I'll call you right back.
Okay.
All right. Bye. All right, folks. Give us 5 minutes. Give us just a little bit of minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay, cool.
All right. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. David Dayen is back with us, hopefully sounding a little bit better. David, are you there?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
So you were just about to totally agree with my premise about Nancy Pelosi trying to basically block anything that might be structural in some way, like any artifice that's going to exist after the
yeah, but I know and look, I know what you mean, and I'm not disagreeing with that completely out of hand, but the point is that if you spend $3 trillion and it goes to lower class people, small businesses, and state and local governments, and then on to their employees, that is structural. That because in the absence of that, you're destroying that sector. You're destroying people's livelihoods. You're putting them in a hole they won't be able to come out of. So that is structural. The giving $1 trillion to state and local governments and preventing a depression is structural, because the depressions have long-term consequences. So I'm disagreeing to an extent. Obviously, there are just a jumble of contradictions in this thing, because there's no real thinking about what the goals are wishing to accomplish. It's just sticking a finger in a dike. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And I don't want to let progressives off the hook.
I was just going to say,
they don't really have that coherent a theory either. And they certainly don't have any idea of how to deal with Nancy Pelosi. I mean, one of the most embarrassing comments I've ever seen from Representative Pramila Jayapal, who says that she is a no on this bill. Now, she has been fighting with Pelosi because she wanted her idea, which was direct payroll support for all workers, rather than trying to push everybody onto unemployment. That wasn't in the bill for a variety of reasons, some of which it was Pelosi just kind of being a tyrant. And so there was this question of, well, is the Progressive Caucus going to sink this bill? Jayapal, of course, is the co-chair. So she gave a quote to Politico where she says she's a no on the bill, but that's not an official position of the Progressive Caucus. Also, she's not whipping Dems against the bill. And then she told the reporter, "Can you please put that in your story?" It's the most embarrassing quote I've ever seen. Like, just not only a refusal to fight, but like foregrounding the refusal to fight. Like, please mention that I'm refusing to fight. It's you cannot just sort of out of hand condemn Pelosi without talking about the fact the rest of the caucus is incoherent as well.
And I will say that you also made you had a piece, I don't know, maybe it was 2 or 3 days ago, that Jayapal was basically had her legs cut out from underneath her by all these outside progressive groups who.
That's correct.
I mean, I think the list was it Move On, WFP? Was it others that were basically?
I don't think it was Working Families. I think it was Indivisible and some unions. And I mean, but that's just a total lack of communication. Literally, those organizations were standing with Jayapal and saying the next bill has to have this, and this. And one of those things being the paycheck guarantee, payroll support. And they just jumped out and said, yeah, $3 trillion, yay, we support the HEROES Act. Not seeing this internal fight where Jayapal was trying to get more input on the bill. And it even extends to this. The Congressional Progressive Caucus Center, which is an outside group it's not directly affiliated with the Progressive Caucus, but it's tied to them in some way. They initially tweeted out support of the bill when their co-chair was vociferously against it. I mean, this is just a total disconnect on the progressive left, or among the professional left, I should say, in D.C. They have no power. They have no understanding. They have no idea of how to build a coalition. it's laughable.
I mean, this is it's stunning. Is this? I mean, is it just that we've always had this absence, or is it just like in this type of environment it becomes most obvious?
I mean, I think the latter. Crisis moments, particularly in the last decade or two, given the gridlock in Congress, crisis moments are when you govern, and they don't come along very often. And clearly, they have caught the Democratic policymaking apparatus, to the extent that it exists, completely flat-footed. And you look at the Republican side. The Republican side wanted one thing. They wanted a corporate bailout. They wanted corporations to be protected amid the pandemic. That's all they wanted. They didn't write a message bill with 30 things like, banning all abortions and guns on demand, or I don't know, whatever it would be. They just wanted the corporate bailout. And so McConnell on the CARES Act writes a bill with a big corporate bailout. And other things he trades away, but as long as he gets his corporate bailout, he's happy. So what happens on the other side? Pelosi writes a bill with 300 things in it, and there's no one thing that's an anchor that is the thing that Democrats want. And whether that's structural or not. I mean, corporate bailout isn't necessarily structural. It's a near-term response to the problem, but it will have long-lasting consequences,
right.
Because it's a disproportionate response at the top end of the corporate ladder, and it will create this increasing dominance of large corporations in American life. Pelosi just doesn't have that vision. I mean, this is absolutely the opposite of what Republicans do with governance in a crisis. And so it says to me, and because progressives don't have that vision either, it says to me that vision doesn't exist.
And it seems to me that, I mean, a big part of it is also just a function of the differences between the two parties in terms of how they're made up, and broadly speaking, with the left, right? I mean, because on the left there's like 40 different issues that are the most important issue. You want your leadership on some level to be able to sort of coalesce that and say this one or two things are really sort of like, this is how you sequence it, at least, or something to that effect. But there's none of that. There's none of that coming from Pelosi. I don't know. Is Chuck Schumer still working? Is Chuck Schumer still with us?
Chuck Schumer's in the minority, and obviously Pelosi's going to need to take the lead here because she controls the House of Congress. The thing that she likes about having 300 things in the bill is that there's always something for someone to latch onto. So, Progressive Caucus can say, oh, well, we got $100 or $1 trillion for state and local governments. That's good. And now we have to weigh that against the bad stuff and on down the line. So they can sort of buy off various interest groups and people within the caucus by giving them the one good thing. This is how legislating has happened since Pelosi took back the chair. I mean, remember HR 1? Remember?
Yes. Well, I barely do. I will say I barely do because they buried it with their own attacks on Ilhan Omar at the time. But yes, I get the point taken.
Right. But what do? They pool together 30 different ideas around some sort of loosely organized principle, and they put this omnibus bill together. And then they throw it over to Mitch McConnell, and he says, I'm not doing anything with this. And then they're shocked that they don't get attention within the public over their great bill that has 30 things in it that you can't describe to anybody. So this is the same style of governing. We're going to do the HEROES Act, which is, the HEROES Act, come on. That the whole name. I feel like the preamble should be "in these challenging times."
Right.
You know, like
what the local
what does
ad
that even mean?
Yes. Well, and I mean, that is what was so sort of mind numbing about this notion of like, you got to pass it today, because if it's a messaging bill, it seems to me the one thing you would want is people to talk about it, right? Like, to get the message out. They're going to pass it, and then it's going to be dead on arrival by Monday, and it's going to be gone. It's just like if she wants to be the ability for various different House members to be able to say, I voted for this provision or I voted for that provision, and that's it. There's no message being sent out here.
Exactly. The summary of this bill was 90 pages long. Not the legislation was 1,800 pages, but you couldn't even describe what the bill does in less than 90 pages. How is that going to be an effective political messaging tool? It just doesn't make any sense.
All right. Well, let's move on to the other bastion of leadership that we have in the Democratic Party. Chuck Schumer, of course, is in the minority and is super busy. I think like there are, the width of seatbelts. I
think he's just doing oppo on his potential 2022 opponent, of whom I'm speaking with.
Maybe he's too busy. He's just worried about what Sam Cedar is up to. But at least we have the presumptive nominee, because it would suck if we didn't have a presumptive nominee now, because we wouldn't have that sort of strong voice out there pushing what is actually the Democratic agenda. And that's why I know Pelosi and Schumer are being quiet, because they're trying to defer to our nominee. You've written a piece about him, and it is it's an interesting piece, and it's sort of, I think, like, what my sense of Joe Biden has been, which is there's maybe some opportunity there, but maybe not, and who knows?
Well, I mean, not for nothing, but Joe Biden is the one who came out and endorsed a blanket $10,000 forgiveness on student loans.
Right.
So Pelosi's bill is now to the right of Joe Biden, just to be clear. This piece that I did called Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Biden I wanted to sort of see if there was a best case for a Biden presidency. And so I talked to the campaign. I talked to several individuals inside the campaign. I talked to people working with the campaign as informal advisors. I talked to progressive groups who have had discussions with the campaign. And I just tried to get a real sense of it. And I tried to look at it holistically, not just about Biden the man, or even Biden the man and his team and his personnel, but also the historical moment. So I conceived of this idea before the pandemic hit, and it was certainly a much different idea at that time. And then when the pandemic hit and the whole world changed, typically those moments create political opportunity, and or they sort of move the political system along towards a moment of change. I mean, we're talking about this jumble of a bill, but it is a $3 trillion bill after
Right.
$3 trillion has already been spent. The idea that Nancy Pelosi, who put in a pay-go restriction where no new spending could be done without offsets, is now putting out a $3 trillion bill. It shows the transformative power of these kind of cataclysmic events to change the realm of the possible in the political system. And I look back to the last moment like this, which was obviously the Depression, the Great Depression, and found that public anger was so intense and concentrated that individual politicians who were not really, given to revolutionary change were sort of bargaining with the public over how much revolutionary change they would allow. So, I take the example of Glass-Steagall. So Glass-Steagall is named after Henry Steagall, who was the House Financial Services Committee chair, and Carter Glass, who was the Senate Banking Committee chair. Carter Glass was a Democrat from Virginia, so at that time a Southern Democrat. He was a total stooge for the banking industry. I mean, he was seen as the best friend that Wall Street ever had in Congress. And his name is on Glass-Steagall. And the reason it's on Glass-Steagall, which was a severe disruption to investment, separating investment and commercial banking. The banks hated it. They were outright opposed to it initially. The reason it was Carter Glass's idea is that he was bargaining with the public. The public anger was such that they wanted the full nationalization of banking whatsoever. Getting private banks completely out of the equation. Glass-Steagall, this liberal achievement that made the banking system secure for 50, 60 years, was a compromise. It brought together by a Wall Street stooge. But in that moment, he had to think well outside of his comfort zone and put together this legislation. So I conceive of Joe Biden in those terms, or think about the possibility for Joe Biden to be conceived of in those terms, of someone who certainly throughout his entire political career has not really shown an aptitude for radical, transformative reform agendas, but in the moment where the public itself is going to be given the opportunity to weigh in and say that things have to change in a certain direction, he might be the person to bring about that change, or at least a version of that change. And so I'm not taking sides on this. I really don't know which way it's going to go, because there's a lot of evidence on the other side. The fact that Larry Summers is somehow involved as an economic policy informal advisor. Just Biden's history as someone who reveres bipartisanship and has cut pretty bad deals with Senate Republicans. But the opportunity is there, and that's what I was trying to express through this feature.
Is there not also a bifurcation of the people that didn't exist at that time? Like that there is, look, we have an ideological difference on whether during a pandemic it's a good idea to go to a bar without masks on, right? We do in this country. And that, to me, maybe that has been a dynamic that we had at that time, but I don't think it was that deep of an ideological divide. Is there, in addition to not being able to know, and there being some hints that maybe he is and maybe he isn't susceptible to a push from the people, as it were, isn't the other half of that equation?
Roosevelt was almost shot during the interregnum period between winning the election and becoming president. There was this like deep business plot against Roosevelt. The Plot Against the President, I believe, is the book that details this. There was a right wing that was pretty committed to damaging and eliminating Roosevelt. Now, he had huge numbers in Congress, and that's one of the big differences, I think, that's going to be that even if Biden comes in, even if this is a wave election, certainly in the Senate, you're not going to see the kind of numbers that would give Democrats free rein over the political system. However, that's sort of where the public comes in, and I'm not saying this is the same political age, but depressions have a way to concentrate minds, and we're not there yet. I mean, we have seen obviously a tremendous amount of cataclysmic events in the economy, but they will compound upon themselves. We are not at that moment yet. By next winter, we could be, especially depending on the trajectory of the pandemic. And things change. Republicans passed this bill that has an unemployment standard where it's at the low wage, people are making 150% of what they were. That bill passed 96-0, 98-0 in the Senate. Possibilities emerge in crisis that weren't there before. And certainly this crisis is exposing how depraved and degraded our social and economic structures were in ways that Biden is talking about and talking about pretty regularly, and is seemingly aware of, or his advisors are aware of it. So I don't know that the tribalism that you see is necessarily an impediment to what can be done now. And of course, a lot of the New Deal was compromised particularly by some of the most tribal impulses ever by white Southern Democrats who didn't want to extend these benefits to black people. So, not everything is going to work out, I think, perfectly, but that was true of the New Deal as well.
All right. So let me ask you this: in the course of your reporting, do you have a sense of you talk about the podcast that Biden has, and you capture sort
challenging you in a big way.
He can have it. Come and get it. Come in here. But that comes also with dealing with my kids. But it's also fascinating where you highlight him saying we gotta just make sure that we're stable, and that the way that he's sort of flip-flopping back and forth between these different visions. And my sense of Biden, and this is just like a completely visceral sense. It's just like it's that scene, where the king is, got consumption and he's in bed and everybody's around him, sort of waiting for him to die so they can just try and take over the kingdom on some level. How, and I don't mean literally that he's going to die, but I mean, it's just there does seem to be a quality of a lot of people are trying to get in there and influence him in a way because there's been this sort of lack of agenda, that he did not run on an agenda other than I'm going to be dignified. And that hasn't even necessarily gone that well, but he's not run on a massive political agenda. And so there's this perception, there's a vacuum there and people are trying to fill it. Do you have a sense, and is there a way that we can have a sense, if we knew that Froman was picking Obama's cabinet, we would have been on I like to think that the progressives would have been in a higher state of alert going into that administration than they were. Do we have a sense of what's going on now in that regard?
I think it's not a perception that there was no policy agenda. It's a reality.
Right. Okay.
The Biden's policy team was almost infinitesimal. And there is a lot of jockeying for position. And this is the thing about a Larry Summers, because, you could come up with a bunch of names and credibly say that there's kind of a team of rivals situation happening around policy. within the Biden campaign. And I'm even putting that separate from these task forces,
right?
This thing that Biden and Sanders put together. It's not clear to me what impact that will have whatsoever. It's just very unclear what that means. What we know is that policy was being set through these daily briefings that Biden has with the economic team, and you can put a lot of names in there. Jared Bernstein is in the room. He was the vice president's economic policy advisor, and he's generally seen as someone on the left. And when the Obama administration wanted to put a token progressive in the economic team, they put it in Biden's office. So, I mean, just that's true. You have Heather Boucher, who's with the Washington Center of Equitable Growth. She's in the mix, progressive economist. Ben Harris, another somewhat progressive economist. But you also have Larry Summers, right? He's in the mix there, and some other people on his side, proteges of his, people like Natasha Sarin and a couple others. The difference is that it's not something where you line up, okay, there are three progressives and there are three, more moderates, and it's a 3 versus 3, and it's a level fight or even playing field. Larry Summers, what we know, is a consummate sort of bureaucratic infighter who was able to sort of work his way into not just the Clinton administration, but the Obama administration in a position where he knew how to put himself forward to charm or please powerful people and get his agenda through. That it's not an even fight, right? If Summers is in the mix. And that's why there's a lot of consternation around that, and why groups have said you got to get him out. So on the other hand, you have Ted Kaufman, who was a longtime chief of staff to Biden, and then became senator when Biden left in Delaware, and wasn't running again, so he didn't have to sort of prostrate himself upon special interests like banking interests, and he ended up fighting the banking. Industry.
He was the best guy in the Senate for, I don't know, I can't remember, 6 months or something like that on these issues.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And he is running the transition. So he is in charge of the presidential transition, which is a big hiring position. A lot of recommendations flow through that transition chair. I think it was Podesta in the Clinton administration. I'm not remembering who it was under Obama. But so, that's a point on the other side of that. So there's a lot of contradictions there. Yeah. And Kaufman, by virtue of being, working for decades for Biden, has his trust in a way that Summers really doesn't. I mean, Summers is new to sort of Biden world. On the other hand, there are people in Biden world like Bruce Reed, who was the head of the Democratic Leadership Council back in the day. And Steve Ricchetti, who literally founded a lobbying firm for healthcare interests. And he's a longtime Biden guy, former chief of staff when he was vice president. So it's unclear from a personnel standpoint, and people on the outside are going to have to keep pushing. This example of Natasha Sarin and Social Security. Are you familiar with this? This happened this week.
She's pushing borrow 10 grand and pay it back later type of deal.
Yeah. So Sarin is a protege, a former student of Summers, co-authored some op-eds with Summers. And she put out this paper that said, well, one way that would be great without having to spend any money is you allow people to take 1% of their future Social Security earnings and use it now when they need it. So essentially robbing from Social Security for the future and depriving people of that of those benefits.
That's like
in the future.
It's like a Social Security tax cut, but worse in terms of what it does. Like it's like it cuts out the middleman.
It's like making Social Security a reverse mortgage.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. So the White House sort of picked up on this because there was a separate proposal along the same exact lines from Hoover Institute, the American Enterprise Institute, And the White House started talking about this. And Biden put out a statement like, this is ridiculous. I completely reject robbing from Social Security. And then some of us made the obvious point that your advisor has an academic research paper, not like musing on Twitter, but like put together an academic paper suggesting this very thing. Well, by Tuesday, a day after Biden came out, Sarin put an op-ed in Bloomberg saying that she now has rethought her position. And she lied about it. She was saying, well, I realize that this is bad politics. And what I said was just that this would be cheaper than borrowing from banks, when that's not what she said. She said it would be cheaper than having to spend money as out of the government. But the point of that is that pressure from the outside can work and move these people and change, the dynamic in terms of personnel inside the Biden camp.
David Dayen, it is always a pleasure to talk to you. Folks can check out that piece, Dr. Biden or Mr. Jekyll. What is it?
Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Biden.
I mean, I think, look, people get it. It's the one with Jekyll and Biden in the headline. Over at the prospect.org. We'll put a link to that piece. But folks, when you're over there, do yourself a favor. Just go to prospect.org. Take a peruse around there. You will see an amazing array of stories that you're interested in. And then what you should do is subscribe and help an organization that is providing that type of content, particularly in this era. David Dayen, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Stay safe. David Dayen, ladies and gentlemen, David Dayen. In the meantime, do we have... I got to do something about that. I don't know what the heck is going on with my audio. I got to take that Skillshare audio class. In the meantime, do we have Matt Binder on the Zoom?
Yes, we do. Here he comes.
Can we bring Matt Binder in, ladies and gentlemen, making his, he's been back, but every time he comes, it's sort of like a triumphant return. Wait, what's going on here? Why don't I hear that? Where the heck is, how come God, I am just tired of this.
Is it the computer?
No, I don't know what's going on with this. I'm trying to play my fanfare and it's not happening. Thank you. That is what I like to see, that kind of like professorial support. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Binder, can we see Matt, or is that not gonna?
I'm coming right on right now. Let me, 1 second. There we go.
Why isn't my, out of the blue, this thing doesn't work now? Jeez, oh, Pete. What the heck?
Civilization collapses around us.
Let me try this. Let's see if this one works. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Whoa, Matt Binder. What? Geez, where are you contacting us from? Outer space?
Yeah, this is, I see you've never once watched the Doomed live stream.
Oh my God. No, I have. Well, I've seen it on Twitter, but I didn't really, what do you got going there? How do you have it all black behind you?
Because I don't know, I'm just streaming, from the corner of my 1-bedroom apartment where there's 2 children and a cat. And and the wall behind me isn't all that great.
I don't know.
But listen, it feels weird that I'm like talking with you and I'm not in the office when I'm on the show. So I think I could fix that. Let me see. Pandemic be damned.
Oh, good. Sweet.
There we go.
That's fantastic. Well done. Damn.
But, it's like I'm there. It's like I'm there.
Why is it that Binder can figure this out, but Michael can't? Well,
I think you know the answer to that one.
That's not so hard of a question.
Now, where did you get that image? Had you taken a picture of that image, or
I had taken a picture of this image either the last time or the time prior to that, when I was on the show, and I was like, oh, let me take a picture of this backdrop with no one standing in front of it because it might come in handy in the future.
Nice. Well done. Well, we may have to put that to use going forward. So, what are you doing, Matt? Now in this, is your kids going crazy or what?
Yeah, like it's harder for the I have a 4-year-old Ezra and a 11-month-old now. She's almost going to be a year old this month. Enid, she doesn't know what's going on. The baby doesn't know what's going on. In fact, she's probably going to benefit from being around both me and her mom 24/7 when she grows up and have the extra time with us. But the 4-year-old who's turning 5 in July, I'm worried about him. I really am worried about him. I think this is the age where, going to school for him, he loved it. And it wasn't the learning. It was like, he can't do Zoom.
Socialization.
It's the socialization. Yes. Without his friends to run around with. And it's not the same for these kids of this age to get on Zoom and just see each other, because you know what? They don't talk. They don't have conversation about what's happening. They interact and play superheroes or whatever they're into. They can't do that over Zoom or any other, webcam thing. So, he's getting really agitated. I can tell it's really, he just wants to watch TV. When he does go out, he doesn't want to go out, even though this was a kid who loved going out, never wanted to be indoors. I worry he's regressing, to be quite honest.
I mean, I am going through the same thing with Saul. It's a little bit different because he has that one, he's like on the tail end of that socialization era. So he has the same issue on FaceTime. Like I can FaceTime with his friends and they basically just like, look at my Lego. And the other one says, look at my Lego. And then they just turn towards their Legos and don't communicate at all because they don't know how to. Saul has the added sort of like the dilemma of having some consciousness of what of the coronavirus and some fear now of other people.
Right.
And
my kid he went out the first time he went out to go to the store with his mom. And he was wearing a mask and he noticed that everyone else was wearing a mask and there were less people out. He got really worried. And I think that's when he realized, like, he knows about the coronavirus. He calls it like the new germ or something like that. But, that's when it really hit him. And I think that might've been the real push for him not to go. Because, now, it's getting nicer out, you don't congregate with people, but go to an open field in a park, spend some time, I get some fresh air, some sunlight. He doesn't even really want to do that. And it's getting me, it's getting me worried about him.
Yeah, it's hard. And there's going to be generations of kids. I mean, at different ages, it's going to impact them in different ways, obviously, but going forward. Yeah, well, I'm sorry about that. But you're able to do your show, able to do it with this great backdrop.
All right. You're very distracted by it. I think you're still.
No, it's awesome. It looks great. I'm so excited by that. I can't even tell you.
You might, if this gets me on the show more often, then it was all worth
it. Exactly. Boom. Well, the other thing is that you've been a little bit busy dealing with you went on Turkish TV with Brandon Straka.
I was on with Brandon Straka.
We have this clip. Now we have the whole thing. It's long, but what's the best part? For me, the best part is where he's calling you. He's saying that you're calling him a murderer.
Absolutely, that is the best part. And I mean, on the show, I tried to be more diplomatic and said, I'm not calling you that, but I absolutely was calling him a murderer.
All right. Well, can we play that clip? Can we?
We have that.
Can we go to the? Yeah, this is pretty funny. Now, let me just remind everybody who Brandon Straka is. He is the founding member of Walk Away, which has been a resounding unsuccess in terms of like getting Democrats to walk away from the Democratic Party and vote for Trump. I don't think that there has been certainly no more movement than typically. And he started this campaign, in 2016 or 2017. And by 2018, the Democrats had won the greatest electoral victory on an off-year election in the history of anybody alive now.
I think Brexit was more successful.
Yeah. the number of seats that they took was less because of gerrymandering, but the sheer disparity of Democratic votes, which is really all he's working on, right? Like he's not working in gerrymandering districts or anything like that. For him, it's just like, I'm trying to convince as many Democrats as possible to walk away from Democrats, and they've completely failed. And so now he's sort of like, is he changing his branding or what's he doing?
Well, his thing now is that he's traveling around the country to each of these end the lockdown protests, and he's trying to make his name off of that. I think he's still pushing walk away. I think that's still his thing. But right now, it's there's a grift in the pandemic, that's for sure. I mean, this is I cover grifters a lot, and this is prime grifting material. I mean, I don't think they've ever been so joyous over something like this before. This is beautiful for all people who find money to be made in the pandemic.
All right, let's play this clip of Straka, who is really upset because you've apparently called him a murderer.
Is it a fair point? I don't know. You tell me. I got on 6 airplanes, 3 going there and 3 going back. I stood in a crowd of 1,000 people in the pouring, freezing rain, which is a prime breeding ground for coronavirus. I'm healthy as a horse.
Pause and so are all of the people. Pause it for 1 second. Now, so his argument is, I did not catch coronavirus, so maybe it's fake or something?
Right. I don't know if he thinks it's fake or if it's just not as dangerous. What seems to be the case is you have a rift even between these conservative grifters. You have the ones who believe this is an actual thing, but all the experts were wrong and it's not that serious. And, of course it's real. So some old people and the ill, survival of the fittest. Some people will just have to die. Oh, well. And then there's people who just don't believe it's even a thing. Like they were lied to by Bill Gates and Dr. Fauci and, of course not Donald Trump, the president of the United States, who has all the power in the world.
Well, he's just got to go along with it. He's just got to go along with it.
Right. Well, how else he's going to get in there to take down that global pedophile ring if he's not going along with this, right, Sam?
Now, exactly. Now, is it the case that freezing rain and cold is actually a prime breeding ground for coronavirus? Is he just making that up?
I mean, I have no idea where that came from. I mean, the belief for a long time when this was first happening was, like other illnesses, less people get sick when the weather's warmer, when it's nicer out. I mean, this was happening in Australia during their summer. It's happening in South America during their summer. They're not in the clear. They're locked down in all over. I mean, I have family in Peru who have been locked down, and even more strict lockdowns there than they have here. And they don't even have a double-digit or even single-digit percentage of what we've got. So,
that may not be a coincidence.
Right.
And I think part of it is, it seems to me, from what I can tell regarding the weather, is that it may be the case that it is harder to contract outside because the air is not as thick with the coronavirus if you're outside. That's just, I've just read that. Obviously, folks, do not change your behavior in any way because I've said that, but that's just, we don't.
I think there's like a broader thing where less people do get sick in the summer when it's nicer out or whatever. And this probably follows along with that, but there's no truth to the belief that this will just disappear in the summer months and there's nothing to worry about. Like people still do get sick in the summer,
right?
Even though it's less, it'll be the same like this. People will still get it, but that second wave probably will happen, after August.
The epidemiologists have told me that it happens 6 months after the first peak. Second peak happens 6 months after the first peak. But put all that aside because that's just science. Let's listen to the art of Brandon Straka.
There at that rally.
Matt, what's the problem?
Have you been tested? Have you been tested, Brandon?
I wouldn't be tested because I don't have any symptoms.
Right. You can be an asymptomatic carrier of this. You can be an asymptomatic carrier of this, killing people as you go to all these things, as you infect them with coronavirus. We don't know.
So now I'm responsible for murder because I went out and exercised my First Amendment right. I now have to feel guilty and responsible for murder because I am presenting a point of view
Are you
that is
practicing?
contradictory
Are you wearing a
to
face? Are you
the
wearing a face mask?
authoritarian point of view that you have, that I must follow your orders, I must follow your guidelines, otherwise I'm a murderer. I want to be very clear.
You're saying that no one. I'm not saying. I'm not saying
push back on that in the strongest possible terms. You have absolutely no right to call me a murderer because I'm exercising my First Amendment rights and because I'm standing up for working people in the United States of America. How dare you? Do not say that to me.
My issue is you're using a very specific example. This is just information based on you, one individual, and you're trying to use that to tell people, hey, I'm not sick, so you can go out. Are you a person over the age of 65?
Where were you when tens of thousands of people are dying every year of the flu?
Hey, Brandon, I let you talk.
Hold on for 1 second. Yeah, Matt. Where were you when all these people were dying of the flu? How come you weren't why weren't you doing anything about that?
I don't know. It's my bad. I guess I'm responsible.
To be fair, I do think that you were copacetic with the flu vaccine that was going around, right?
Right. Well, to be fair, last time I was on the show, I did bring whatever illness I had into the office, if you remember.
I think you did. Yes. So Matt, you're a murderer. This guy's using the argument that I know a guy who smoked for many years and did not die of lung cancer. Therefore, smoking is healthy for you.
Right.
And then he takes the murderer thing. It's good to see Brandon do this. I guess I can appreciate the fact that at least he is putting and do we know, is he wearing masks at these things? I wonder if he wore a mask on the plane, because you don't have to on many of these planes. If he actually took 6 planes, my guess is he would have hit one flight where he wasn't forced to wear a mask. I bet you he did wear a mask.
I don't know. A lot of these, I'll be honest, a lot of these guys are really going out there and pushing with the idea that, wearing a mask is weak.
Emasculating?
It's emasculating. Yeah. Wearing the mask, doing all this stuff is weak. I mean, that one of the things at these protests is there are people who are proudly not wearing any masks and just saying it's ridiculous. It's bullshit. It's stunning. It seems like, even if you want to end the lockdown and you think this has all gone too far, you think the easiest thing in the world would just be, look, I'm wearing a mask. I'm taking this precaution. Open up now. We could all do this. But I mean, they're just like shooting themselves in the foot by clearly showing that they're not ready to reopen up, by not being able to follow these very simple rules that will allow them to live their lives, as close to life before the pandemic as possible.
And to be clear, you don't wear a mask at one of these things. I mean, I suppose if you have like one of the if you have a good woodworking mask, I think your mask could be effective in preventing you from getting it. Although there's a doctor from who's an NBC contributor who's in the hospital now, who's convinced that he got it on a plane through his eyes because it was so packed in that plane.
Right.
But the bottom line is you wear a mask because you're protecting other people. And that is just the worst thing you can do, folks, is having to protect other people. Then you're basically conceding to this entire communistic perspective on society.
Right. I mean, the mask is the one thing that helps solve what you can't do anything about. Like, you don't want to wear gloves. That's fine. You could be careful. It's hard. I mean, people touch their face all the time and touch things, but you can theoretically go through, constantly using hand sanitizer, not touching things. You can't control the particles in the air. You will get someone sick, or you yourself will get sick without having to do anything because you just walked into it and it got into your eye or your nose or your mouth. I mean, that's why the mask is the most important thing.
So what else have you been following? Other things? We should say that I think you may be unrivaled in terms of following the right-wing grifters over the years. Certainly, you introduced me to Mike Cernovich, and then Mike Cernovich introduced me to a world of renown and fame. And so I hope he's doing well during this. Is he still around? What's he doing now?
Honestly, he's completely fallen. A lot of the guys who helped get Trump where he is didn't quite get anything in return, really. There's, what you basically have is the right is in shambles, all sorts of different well, at least the far right is in shambles. Obviously, if you look at our government, that's not the case. But the far right and the movements surrounding that are in shambles. They are in various different subgroups. A lot of them have gotten banned. So, a lot of them aren't part of the discourse online on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube like they were in 2015 and 2016. So they're not as, out there as they were. But one thing that we are dealing with that wasn't there in 2015 and 16 is QAnon. And the problem with QAnon is that there are no single individuals to ban. And it has grown to a point where it has gone beyond cult. It is a religion now. QAnon is a religion. And the people who follow QAnon are responsible for pretty much all of these conspiracies that you see. I mean, they are deep into the pandemic conspiracies. Their
Plandemic, right?
Yes. 2 weeks ago, I had Jared Holt on the show from Right Wing Watch, where we both watched, not Plandemic, but we both watched. There was another QAnon movie that came out that basically broke QAnon down, and it's from the perspective of the QAnon followers. And we watched that and did like a watch party with that, commenting on it throughout. And they are beyond saving or even like getting through or convincing otherwise. It is literally a lost group of people. This isn't even like, when we talk about white supremacists and there's like the young people who get thrown down the YouTube rabbit hole who just need to be turned on to the right people, listen to some, good leftist commentary on YouTube and talk with some leftist friends and they could be taken back. We are beyond that. QAnon has split up families. We're talking parents and kids no longer talking, relationships over. QAnon is now a religion, and they are.
Will you tell people what it is? I mean, I think a lot of a decent amount of our audience are sane and also don't spend their time, sort of digging into this. Will you tell them what it is?
Sure. So QAnon grew out of Pizzagate. Pizzagate was the conspiracy theory that when the Podesta emails leaked from Wikipedia, from WikiLeaks, not Wikipedia, don't confuse the two, from WikiLeaks and right before the 2016 election, conservatives, right-wingers realized that there were a lot of references to pizza. Now, I don't know why a campaign would order so much of a food that's quick, easy to eat, on the move, and everybody loves. I don't know why, but they do. And they thought that the only logical explanation for pizza being mentioned so much in these emails is that they are code words for a pedophile ring. Different toppings mean different types of children. Different references to different places mean different sorts of routes or whatever. And it all sort of took them to Comet Pizzeria, a popular pizza joint in Washington, D.C. And the belief from that was that there is a major pedophile ring that's being run out of the Comet Pizzeria in D.C. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen Pee-wee's Big Adventure, one of my favorite movies of all time, but that movie's premise is that Pee-wee believes that his stolen bike is hidden in the basement of the Alamo, and he goes to the Alamo and finds out that there is no basement in the Alamo. Well, for this, QAnon needed an armed individual to travel with his gun, go into the pizzeria, basically force them to show him that there is no basement to the Comet Pizzeria. And that's what I guess would have convinced most people. Pee Wee Herman at least was convinced his bike wasn't in the non-existent basement. Not so for the QAnon people. They moved on to there's got to be more, and they moved on to the QAnon conspiracy. Now, what happened with this was
now,
the
let
same
me just
people.
say this. It obviously wasn't a random reference to pizza, because if you're getting if the child prostitute ring is out of a pizzeria, that's why they called it pizza.
Right.
If it had been in a burger joint, it would have been, what kind of burger do you want?
Right. Obviously, whenever you're doing
I
these
just want
things,
to be clear on that.
Right. Whenever you're doing these things, these illegal rings that, would end your life and career and who knows what else, you want to be as explicit as possible what it is you're doing.
And you want to broadcast it to all the people on your campaign, because everybody knows you never join a campaign or get into any type of professional situation unless you share the same criminal conduct, perversion, whatever you want to call that.
It's like Obi-Wan Kenobi hiding from the Sith for years under the secret name of Ben Kenobi. No one could figure that out.
Right. All right. So that is the Pizzagate. And then they move on. And I will say that in college, I did a thesis on Millenistic cults. And, you know, they think the world is going to end on a certain day. And then that day comes and the world, you know, at least up to this point, it did not end. And they're like, it didn't end because of the this that happened. And therefore it's not January 16th, it's June 16th. And it's not 1989, it's actually 1996 that we have to wait for. And the cult in no way seems to be harmed by their failure to predict the end of the world, even though everybody sold off all their stuff or whatever. And so this is sort of like that, right? So after Pizzagate fails, QAnon takes on like a whole nother narrative.
Right. So there obviously has to be a global pedophile ring. And so
I think there actually may very well be.
There is, for sure, but of course it's another instance where the answers of the problems are right in front of them, and they're coming up with some crazy conspiracy to find out what's going on, like with Alex Jones and the Bilderberg Group and the lizard people.
Right.
I mean, the answer really is that there are very powerful rich people who pull a lot of the strings because they influence policy. It's not really all that hidden, to be quite honest with you.
Right, they're not lizards.
Right.
I mean, that's what we used to say on the program was that if Alex Jones didn't exist, the CIA or the Bilderberg Group would invent him just as a way of like throwing people off the trail as to like, yes, you actually do have some power to influence the world we live in. Instead, Alex Jones feeds people all this stuff like they're changelings, they're lizard people, and, we're all controlled. They control the weather through a machine. And basically, it disempowers everybody. And this QAnon thing on some level feels sort of like that as well.
Right. So I don't know if you remember that first year of Trump's presidency. I don't know if you want to remember that, but there's that early press conference where he's in front of all those military people and he makes this vague mention to, this is just the calm before the storm.
Yes.
And a lot of people at that time thought, is Trump planning on, launching a war or something? But to the QAnon, the people who would be the Pizzagators who would become the QAnon people, to them, that was something different. That was a hint that Trump is now involving himself in all this. And they basically concocted the story that there's this secret war being waged behind the scenes between Donald Trump and his closest confidants against the deep state and this global pedophile ring made up of, the very wealthy in the world. Hollywood, of course, plays a major role, and Democratic politicians. And they believe the reason it's called QAnon is because this information they're getting that sort of helps them form this worldview is coming from an anonymous individual who originally started putting these vague posts up on 4chan. But it was so crazy for even 4chan, where basically the alt-right and all these racist personalities basically made their name for themselves in the lead up to the 2016 election. QAnon was so crazy that 4chan didn't even want it. So they got pushed off to 8chan, which 8chan is basically the image board where all the mass shooters go to tell people they're about to commit a mass shooting before they actually go ahead and do it. So QAnon basically lived there, and this anonymous individual or individuals, we don't know, there's all sorts of speculation who or how many people are behind it, would just leave these really vague, comments that basically anyone can parse anything out of. It's so vague. And that's where you sort of get this QAnon conspiracy, where it's this broader thing where, yes, Trump versus the world to take down this global pedophile ring, and everything Trump does is for a reason to take down this global pedophile ring. But because of the vague stuff Q's posting, you get all these other weird conspiracies that get birthed out of it. There's a conspiracy that JFK Jr. is still alive, actually, and is a secret Trump supporter who's helping Trump behind the scenes and just waiting for the right moment to come out and convince all these Democrats to vote for Trump by showing that he's still alive. And of course, you're JFK Jr. Whatever you say, the Democrats will do.
What was he doing for those other 15 years before Trump came on? Just hoping that Trump would win?
There's people who think that there are individuals who foresaw the Trump win years and years and years before. Well, remember, Trump's been saying since early 2000s at the very least.
So, do we know how many adherents there are to QAnon?
It's unclear because, there is no, there is no real like meeting point for them. There are big Facebook groups with a couple thousand people, maybe even the tens of thousands of people, but they're not like a group that has meetings like when Richard Spencer had an official alt-right that would come and meet, or the Ku Klux Klan would have their meetings or whatever. You can't even really tell the subgroups because it's all just so dispersed. And the weird thing is that you'll notice when you see the Trump rallies, because the QAnon thing is officially gone from internet conspiracy to you see the Q signs when there were still Trump rallies being held. But the weird thing is this is something that was birthed on these image boards that are known for basically, preteens trolling with stupid racist memes, and then actual legitimate like movement racists trying to turn those, troll racists into actual racists, and actually do something, spark some sort of shooting or something. This is an audience that's mostly, I would say, under the age of 40 to be even to be generous there. How these boomers, and it's a lot of boomers, took to this is beyond me. And I think it shows just how the QAnon movement went into the mainstream sort of, conspiratorial right-wing diaspora. And whatever that word is, and
diaspora, right?
Diaspora, thank you. And the boomers don't know the difference between real news and fake news. Sorry, boomers who are listening, but there are studies that show young people can actually tell fake news at a much better percent. Young people can tell, and boomers are more susceptible to it.
I think older people, frankly, are not used to the idea that total lunatics have as much access to broadcasting information as, the same network that had Walter Cronkite. Like, I mean, you have access to the same tools. The bar to entry is so low there that I think, you can't, I think you grow up. I mean, I just remember, my grandmother, who was not a boomer, she was much older than that. I remember shooting some video at a holiday, and she was very concerned, and she called me. She's like, did it come out? And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. Did it come out? Like, because, and it used to be that you'd take some film and wouldn't, some like half the time it just didn't come out. I'm like, no, it's video, Grandma. It's there. I knew we got it the moment I recorded it. Right. And that like occupied like a year and a half of our conversations, just her amazement at that structure. And I think like there's a quality of, the idea that like, wait, some dude who's just playing a prank on everybody has the same essentially amplifying system for this news as.
Right.
So let me ask you this, because we're going to move on to, do you think that after the Trump presidency, some guy or girl or guys or girls or a mixture of the two, could be a co-ed effort, are going to come out and announce like, we're part of the Smelly Footlockers. We're an improv troupe from Ohio, and we decided to do this like 3 years ago. It just took off, and so we did it. And
I mean, I feel like at this point, if that was the case, I feel like even those people would have come out already and just been like, listen, we can't keep this going on because there are people showing up and shutting down bridges with their cars and strapped with bombs, and they have guns. And I mean, this has happened. Right. This has happened. Like, it's getting to the point where I think if it was all just, a joke or, a prank, it would have come out. What's probably the more realistic is that this was a bunch of, far-right grifters who knew this was all bullshit, had nothing to do with anything, and it went much further than they thought. And, why get rid of that audience? I mean, why not just continue to keep it going? I mean, they probably have a completely unaffiliated website that pushes this stuff, and that's how they get their own content. They're creating the content that they end up reporting on later on. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
All right. Lastly, why have you not tried to monetize this? Like, why do you not have a merch shop? And then maybe you do, and you just won't tell us. But why don't you have like a merch shop of like Q is coming or something like that? And like the one thing that sticks out for me in this type of situation is there's a lot of money on the table. And you could slowly, like I was going to, back in the day during Obama, there was this video going around that they were selling on like Alex Jones and this and that, like the real Obama story. And I was going to do one that would sound just like this documentary because it's all images and just a voiceover, but it would basically just push people to the conclusion that what we really need is a healthcare system where everyone is covered and the government pays for it, but Obama will never give you that. And I'm convinced I could have made thousands of dollars on that.
Right. Well, why didn't you do it?
I was just too busy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd feel bad. Like, I think I would actually, it would.
Oh, I wouldn't have felt bad.
I don't know. Like, cause I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't feel bad for those people. I think I'd feel bad making profit off of things that are harming individuals, not so much taking their
you'd
money.
have to do a little bit of thing in there just to make yourself feel good about it. But
I mean, I could, maybe I could do that and like donate half of the proceedings to like, the DSA or some other leftist group. And that could probably make me feel good knowing that money is going to, right now I could give money to people who need it during the pandemic. You know what? Maybe that would make me feel really good. So that's really easy. Time to start.
Brought to you by QAnon.
Maybe it's time to look into that. The real, a lot of people are starting to sell those. This is a problem. I was about to say a lot of people are selling like customized face masks now with like your favorite team printed on it. Problem is though, the QAnon people don't believe the face masks. So
that's right. They're not going to buy those.
Right. But Trump is selling them. Have you seen that? Trump is selling Trump face masks in the Trump shop.
We're going to come out with face masks that just say your mask protects me. My mask protects you. That way it's basically, because my experience has been when I'm out with a mask on and I see other people not wearing it, I just want to say, hey, you're an effing asshole. And so now you don't have to actually explain it. It's actually be printed on the mask.
Right. How often do you see people without?
Huh?
Because around here where I am in Flushing, Queens, like the heart of, America's Chinatown, everyone's been wearing a mask since like before this pandemic. So
yes. Not the case in the more rural parts. I can tell you that. There's a lot of like machismo involved and like, I don't have to worry about that. And it's like, well, dude, I'm not worried about you. You worry about you. I'm worried about me. And that's why you're not wearing the mask is a problem for me. And so that's what we're doing with those masks. But, sadly, the only thing QAnon mask, it could be something to the effect of like, why my mask is protecting you from a fraud.
Maybe the way to get them to wear masks is to say every dollar that you spend for a QAnon mask goes to taking down the global pedophile ring, that it's funding Trump's war to take down the global pedophile ring and to send those Democrats and Hollywood celebrities to jail.
This mask is not for coronavirus. It's to put Hollywood in prison. Something like that.
Right.
Matt Binder, folks should check out Doomed. Where is that available? Where can I find this?
Yeah, the audio version is at doomedpod.com. And then the live streamed version is at youtube.com/Matt Binder. Everyone should go subscribe to that YouTube channel right now.
Go subscribe to it. Do you got a Patreon?
I do have a Patreon, patreon.com/Matt Binder. If you can afford to do so during these troubling times, I feel bad asking, but if you, if you can, subscribe.
Matt, always a pleasure. Thanks, buddy. Great backdrop.
Thank you. Take care,
hope
Sam.
To see more of that in the future. All right.
I hope you see more of it too.
Matt Binder, ladies and gentlemen. Matt Binder. Thanks, buddy.
Take care.
All right, folks. Going to head into the fun half quickly. We'll come back. We'll take some IMs. Maybe we'll take a couple phone calls. We got a lot of sound to get through. A lot of clips. We'll be right back. We should probably do this. I want to remind you that Embark Breed and Health Test is the key to unlocking your dog's unique breed mix and genetically informed health needs. You can identify over 250 breeds, screen for over 175 genetic health conditions to help provide the best medical care for your dog. Go to embarkvet.com now. Use the promo code MAJORITY. You save 15% off your dog breed and a health kit. It's embarkvet.com. Coupon code MAJORITY. And just a reminder, this program relies on your support. If you can become a member, please do. Join the majorityReport.com. Also, check out the AM Quickie. We're still doing that bad boy every morning. Get a little jump on the big stories of the day. A lot of news going on. A great way to organize it. amquickie.com. Don't forget justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority. Get 10% off of that. This is the... Look at this. I'm going through like a full pot of this almost every show now, and I'm loving it. I don't know why I wasn't doing this full pot of coffee every day. That's what I'm taking out of this thing, Jamie. I'm doing just a full pot of coffee. I have gone through, I think, like 7 pounds of just coffee. I've done the Majority Report blend. I've done Bike Fuel and Los Diosos.
Pots.
What's that?
Soon you'll need 2 pots a day.
Maybe soon. I'm trying to build a habit. What is Jamie low on your end, guys?
She is a little bit, but her mic always kicks up stronger after it warms up a little bit. So.
Yeah, get your mic warmed up there. Jamie, what's happening on the Antifada?
Yes, this week on the Antifada, we have a hot, fresh episode of History is a Weapon with Sean and Matt Chrisman from Chapo Trap House. I listened to it last night. It was very good. They made a pretty convincing case that this might be the end of the American experiment. They really crush up the black pill and snort it, and then they come out the other end and get somewhat hopeful again. It's a wild ride. So
is that the only thing that they crushed up and snorted in that program, or?
No comment.
There you go. Your microphone's now warming up.
And we also have a red panel that Andy and I moderated. Sorry, my cat's being really annoying. For Red May Seattle, virtual edition on coronavirus and the future of work, featuring Aaron Bonanov, Annie McClanahan, and Magali Miranda. Also, Sean did a crossover episode with Terrence from Trillbilly Workers Party on Origi and world systems theory. So check that out. It's in the Trillbillies feed. Thought it was going to be in our feed today, but it's not. Oh, well. Also, I still must highly recommend our episode with Assad Haider, a super smart, super amazing Marxist that we released last week before last. Time is an illusion. Yes. Patreon.com/the Antifada.
Also, folks, don't forget TMBS. Matt, what happened? You took a vacation last night.
Yeah, Michael was feeling a little bit under the weather yesterday, so we didn't have anything. But I think we're going to be doing some streaming on Sunday.
What does he have?
It's not. I don't believe it's coronavirus-related symptoms. So
all right.
Hopefully he's feeling a little bit better
crossed.
today.
Folks can check out the Michael Brooks Show on YouTube, and you can go to patreon.com/TMBS. Also, don't forget to watch our friend Nomiki's show, Nomiki Const, at YouTube and on patreon.com, the Nomiki Show. Oh, what's wrong with me? And also, of course, we have Lottery Hangover. Lottery? Am I saying that wrong?
Are you okay?
No, I'm trying to cover for the fact I can't say Nomiki's name. I can say it when I say it like that, but when I gear up.
You got the yips. You're like Chuck Knobloch.
Yes, Knobloch.
It's true. I'm like Knobloch.
Knobloch second base. Yeah.
Throwing it over. I can't. Who was the first baseman at that time? You just throw it over his head.
That's probably before Morneau. I don't know. But not about the old Twins, but Literary Hangover. Twitch.tv/Literary Hangover. Last night I played some Red Dead Redemption while listening to Richard Slotkin's The Fatal Frontier, the myth of the frontier and the age of industrialization. So we learned about why Custer resonated so forcefully with the American public, and you get to see me fail to break a horse and get eaten by wolves. So check that out.
Now, in that situation, could you be playing against me?
Yeah, I think there's online. There's Red Dead Online. I haven't done much of it, but there is an online version.
If I get a console and I want to play, all right, well, we'll deal with that. All right, folks, see you in the fun half. left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
I think I might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey! Shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
all right, folks, we are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. It's the fun half. Jamie's here, Matt's here, Brendan's here. So isn't this caller from a 210 area code? And I got to tell you, folks, we're not going to have too many calls today. Who's this? Calling from 210. All right. Hang on there. I'm having problems with the thing. Ay. Tech. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I can not do anything. There's something wrong with the call-in thing. I should be in the thing, but I'm not in the thing. Can you hear me, caller? 210? Ay. It's not giving me a chance to do the... Hold on. 210, are you there? 210? Uh, 210, are you there? Hold on, one more thing I'll try. I don't know why, if I hear that, why I can't call in.
Hello?
Yeah, this is just too annoying.
I can hear you now.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
You can?
Loud and clear.
Yes, I can.
All right, fantastic.
Okay.
John from
It's
San
John.
Antonio. How are you? What can I do for you, John?
Yeah, I want to pick up on a point that Dayen made about people demanding change during the Great Depression, because it looks to me like the current American voting public is not making, near the same demands as the workers did during the Great Depression. And, the unemployment rate, it was still it was high in 30 and 31, but, it's not near as high as it is now. And so, I'm just wondering, older voters, they put Trump in office and they gave the nomination to Biden. And I've used the phrase, that older voters have a Stockholm syndrome. And I think that, obviously most politicians have the same thing, centrist politicians. And it seems to me that the public is paralyzed. And I don't know if the American voting public is going to realize how bad the situation is before this year's election. And do you want to comment on that? And then I'd like to talk a little bit about the Kara Eastman victory and maybe some other Oregon races.
I think we are still in a state of shock when it comes to the understanding of what we're facing economically. I think that we will have a better sense of this when we get on the other side of the panic associated with this. I think, still people are just looking at this. The economy is a second order thing here, to the physical safety of people. And so I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is, I think because younger people are not as in danger from COVID-19, or at least there's a perception, but I think, the reality is less of a chance of dying if you're in your 20s or 30s than if you're in your 60s or 70s, without a doubt. It's not even close. That the ire is turned towards the lockdown as opposed to a perception of government's policy options in terms of the economy. I don't know, Jamie, do you have a point on that?
Yeah, so I think people are aware that things are bad, but they don't think there's anything that they can do about it. If you look at the voting patterns, right? Almost half of everyone doesn't vote, and that is a group that skews poor or working class. It's a group that skews non-white. It's a group that's been told their entire lives that they deserve nothing. And they've gotten plenty of evidence from both Democrats and Republicans that voting isn't going to change anything. Even if they do believe that they deserve things, they're like, what can we do about it? And that is what I'm talking about when I talk about depoliticization. If you've been told your whole life by both political parties, oh, Medicare for all, that's crazy. You're not going to think that that is a realistic option.
All right. But with that said, there's still a lot of people who vote, and they don't seem to be, we don't seem to hear from that cohort. I agree with you. There is definitely a massive amount of people out there who don't vote. A subset of them don't vote because they don't, they are engaged and are depoliticized, and then the other ones are just depoliticized. But you would imagine there would be some expression, not necessarily.
Well, I think there has been some expression. The working class really voted for two candidates in this primary, right? They voted for Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. And that is evidence that on some level, these kinds of working class politics have pull, but also you can be depoliticized and still vote, right? All of the people who say that they want Medicare for all, but voted for Joe Biden anyway in these exit polls, that's depoliticization. That's a failure to imagine a better world because all of the evidence is against you.
But John, are you talking about voting in this instance, or how would you see this expression of anger that you think is not there?
Well, I don't see the left, the movement. I see things like Medicare for all, the numbers have gone up. but I don't see I know this is still early, but I mean, in the voting public, in the the primary season down ballot, but I don't see this rush toward left candidates. I mean, it was a great win from Cara Eastman, by 30 points, and I guess that may be the closest thing. I think she's just a real wholesome person who the people of Omaha like mostly, and they're not turned off by her, center. It's not more center. I mean, she's not as good as the squad, but I mean, she still supports a lot of left ideas. But I mean, as far as some other things is it's actually about 60% of the eligible for voting public actually voted in 2016, and that has actually gone up. Since 72. The numbers, the voting numbers were pretty bad, one of the lowest in our entire, country. And I mean, you can definitely put that to the rise of neoliberalism, but starting in 2004, and I think that the Iraq War was a great driver of that. Voting participation has actually gone up, compared to what it should be, and compared to, Scandinavian countries, it's obviously still extremely poor, but people are becoming more involved, and obviously the Sanders movement in both 16 and 20 it was a great it's a great shot in the arm. I think people are a little bit let down right now, and and I understand the idea that that's not the only expression that you can make politically is just by voting. But I mean, as far as having tangible results in an improvement in most people's lives, whenever like you were saying before about Cobra, and I've been reading a lot about Cobra and the push for Cobra and how ridiculous it is, and you're absolutely right that the reason they're not pushing Medicare for all is because once that comes in, if that was ever to come in, people would never want it,
Exactly.
gone.
Exactly. I appreciate the call, John. Yeah, I mean, that's my point about what Pelosi is afraid of doing. She is afraid of, you can expand unemployment benefits, but people don't largely want to be unemployed. And they don't want to have to go through the process of even filing unemployment. Like, you may want to get paid not to work. I certainly wouldn't mind that, but I don't want to go through unemployment. That's not a particularly pleasant process. You're basically doing another job. It's just one to get your, but
what's
expanded
the deal with
Medicaid,
unemployment?
expanded Medicaid or Medicare. Give me that for 6 to 8 months or a year, and then try and take it away from me. I'm going to be pissed. And I think that's what Pelosi is very worried about happening. All right, we got one more phone call, and then we got some audio. Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this?
Hey, Sam, it's Ronald Reagan.
Oh, look at you. You guys were really on top of it today. You and John from San Antonio.
Finishing off Bird and McHale, Pippen, Jordan to Pippen.
Well done. Let's just stay with the Bird and McHale.
I'll be the Pippen.
Let's bet Bird and McHale.
Bird and McHale. Okay, fine.
I mean, maybe I'll give you guys Cedric Maxwell and
I'm Rodman.
maybe Tiny Archibald.
I'm Danny Ainge, obviously. I think
of course, that's
most
obvious.
people understand that almost reflexively. Hey, just real quick, there's been some strikes going on here in the agricultural heart of Washington State, and I wanted to point people in the direction of a GoFundMe for some striking agricultural workers. It's GoFundMe.com/DidYouEatToday.
Brendan, can you pop that up?
You did, probably.
GoFundMe.com/DidYouEatToday?
Yes. So these are some workers at a packing plant. So there's different types of ag jobs, obviously picking, pruning, thinning, all that stuff. But there's also a lot of people who work in the warehouses where the fruit is sorted or packed, and so they're demanding hazard pay and PPE. And if people want to see some videos and things, there's a group called Familias por la Justicia, Families for Justice, and they're on Facebook. You can see their videos of the striking workers. They're trying to raise $30,000, which is a lot, but I think on top of being able to pay the bills and things for these workers, it would just send such a huge message if they were able to come up with that money very quickly, because it's really hard to get ag workers to strike. They're poorly paid. They're seen as sort of fungible and replaceable. Many of them don't have papers, which adds another layer of risk. And so these people really deserve to be supported. And if the broader community sees, people from across the country stepped up and delivered when they stood up for themselves, maybe they'll do the same for us. I think it would go a really long way. So it's also my pinned tweet right now on the Twitter. So if you need a link, you can look me up at Yakima Avogado. That's my handle. And yeah, I know times are tough. It's a weird time to be asking for money. But if you are one of those people who can spare a couple dollars, it goes a long way in this instance. So
it is GoFundMe.com/DidYouEatToday.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Ronald Reagan. Stay safe. All right. Let's we'll put a link to that in the show description. Your dollar goes a long way in that situation, because it's going to impact those people directly, and then it's going to impact other labor actions going forward. So good for you, Ronald Reagan. Look at that. And you got up early.
Hell yeah. I think and I hope that this crisis is going to make more people aware of the supply chains and the many hands that go into producing the things that they need from day to day.
It's got to. I mean, I don't know that we're going to hit the I think it's going to, I think when we're done with this, I hope that our politics are significantly different. I worry that it won't be the case, but we'll see. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is completely freaked out, it seems to me, by this Dr. Bright, who was the former director of the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, because he is coming out, he is testifying in the Senate, Republican-controlled Senate. The House. He is testifying in the House, not the Republican-controlled Senate, but the Democratic-controlled House, and good for them for holding some hearings. It also shows that they could hold hearings. But Dr. Bright is out there, and we have two clips. Which one should we play? They're both important, right?
Both important. 2 is the more shocking, and 3 is the more supportive, illustrative.
All right, let's go with 2 and 3. We'll play both these clips. So Dr. Bright is in charge of BARDA, and they do all the research and development for vaccinations in the U.S. government. He's now been fired because he wasn't on board with the hydroxychloroquine push. But he was also the guy who early on was securing PPE and floating it up, and his superiors, not at BARDA but in the Trump administration, said, no, we don't want any of that stuff. Here he is talking about those issues right now with Congressman John Sarbanes.
I am sure there are specific conversations, emails, moments in time that you remember like they happened yesterday. The inflection points where, if the response to your warnings had been heeded, things might have been different. And I'm sure they haunt you and keep you up at night. From January of this year, tell me about just one specific moment when you had that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach because you were not seeing the response that you knew needed to happen.
Congressman, I'll never forget the emails I received from Mike Bowen and indicating that we are mask supply or N95 respirator supply was completely decimated. And he said, we're in deep shit. The world is, and we need to act. And I pushed that forward to the highest levels I could in HHS and got no response. From that moment, I knew that we were going to have a crisis for our healthcare workers because we were not taking action. We were already behind the ball. That was our last window of opportunity to turn on that production to save the lives of those healthcare workers, and we didn't act.
I mean, there you have it. I mean, this is why the Trump and Alex Azar in particular are freaking out about this. Alex Azar is out there like a gnat, at these, and Trump is making them come out and address this. That's how you know they're pissed, because they're basically saying, like, this is your mess. You're going to clean it up. Here is Dr. Bright saying the administration making it very clear. They were warned in January. We need PPE. We need respirator masks. We need gowns. We need, gloves. We need this stuff. And the administration was almost like pathologically refusing to get this stuff.
Repeatedly, but were ignored by the senior leadership at the Department of Health and Human Services. Please explain what steps that you took and the response you received.
We knew going into this pandemic that critical medical equipment would be in short supply. I began getting alerts from industry colleagues in mid and late January, telling me that from an outside view, from the industry view, that the supply chain was diminishing rapidly, telling me that other countries that we relied on to supply many of these masks were blocking export and stopping transfer of those masks to the United States. I learned that China was trying to buy the equipment from the United States producers to have it shipped to China so they could make more. In each of these alerts, and there were dozens of these alerts, I pushed those forward to our leadership in ASPR, to Dr. Kadlec and his senior leadership team. I pushed those warnings to our critical infrastructure protection team. I pushed those warnings to our strategic national stockpile team, who has the responsibility of procuring those medical supplies for our stockpile. In each of those, I was met with indifference, saying they were either too busy, they didn't have a plan, they didn't know who was responsible for procuring those. In some cases, they had a sick child and would get back to it later in the week. A number of excuses, but never any action. It was weeks after my pushing that finally a survey was sent out to manufacturers or producers of those masks, a 5-page survey asking producers or companies if they actually made those masks.
I mean, what else? You're in charge of the health, personal protection equipment, national stockpile. Like, that's your one job. How do you not have time to deal with what is coming in? It is because the administration from top to bottom was basically putting out, we're not going to take this seriously. It's going to go away. The president doesn't believe in germs that can actually, doesn't believe in infectious disease, doesn't believe in pandemics. There's a hostility to the functioning of government and science. And that's what you get. They don't do anything. And this is the stuff that, I mean, the Democrats should be doing this every day, because there are a dozen of these people, at least, who have these stories to tell about how Donald Trump and this administration, look, you can't stop a pandemic, but you can seriously diminish and mitigate. And all of that was blown out the window. And now they've just chosen to, let's just blow through it.
Yeah, they're reaching across the aisle, right? Like, if Democrats believe that the virus is real and Republicans believe that it's a hoax, or maybe like God is just punishing the weak, it's some sort of with spontaneously generating disease. It's not a pathogen. The truth is that it's somewhere in between those things.
That's right. It could be a disease, but it's not that contagious.
It's just enraging to hear him talk about how industry contacted him to be like, hey, we got a problem on our hands, for him to send it up the chain of command and then just have them send out a survey like, hey, is this a problem that you've already said is a problem? beyond.
Right. And then the question becomes, I think you get the sense that when that gets shot up the ladder, they're like, I don't think this guy knows anybody in the administration. So we're certainly not throwing our business there. Here's the other thing that that has now, and this has been kicking around for a while, these stories, but I think like this is starting to come to a head. And again, it also sort of like brings up like, why are you focusing on Obama if you're the Trump administration at this point? Like it's like a pathological disease for them, because all that it's doing is now kicking up like, hey, speaking of Obama, what happened to that huge document that Obama left? Not him personally, but the administration left, literally titled like how to fight the coming pandemic, if there is one. And here is Trump and Kayleigh McEnany. This is after Bright now has said, yeah, no, there was a literally, they left us a plan for this. Now the problem with the plan is, you ready for this, Jamie? Not written on tablets. It was written on paper.
It's a tremendous state. They ought to start thinking about opening it up. You have a lot of people want their freedom, and they'll get their freedom very soon. We've been doing very well in the numbers, and I'm going to have Kayleigh say a couple of words. Kayleigh, please.
Hi there. I just wanted to outline our pandemic preparedness. The Obama-Biden plan that has been referenced was insufficient, wasn't going to work. So what our administration did under the leadership of President Trump is do an entire 2018 pandemic preparedness report. Beyond that, we did a whole exercise on pandemic preparedness in August of last year and had an entire after-action report put together. In other words, the Obama-Biden paper packet was superseded by a President Trump-style pandemic preparedness response plan.
Which was much better, which was much more complete, and which was a lot tougher. We were given very little when we came into this administration, and they've done a fantastic job. And I think we're going to have a vaccine by the end of the year. And I think distribution will take place almost simultaneously, because we've geared up the military, and you'll see that tomorrow. All right, anything else?
No. We're not going to have a vaccination by the end of the year. I'm sorry about that, folks. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. But, here's the thing. It was horribly irresponsible for the Obama people to not get a 3-ring binder for their packet, because who's going to read it that way? Like, when you have to do this with the staple, Jamie, as opposed to this, I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the visual on that just now.
It was just a paper packet. No 3-ring binder, no color graphics. There were color graphics on the cover of the Trump one.
No pictures of Trump interspersed throughout to keep him interested.
Exactly. There wasn't a single golf tip in the middle of it or anything like that. Who could be expected to follow along with something like that, where it's all words? Look, I go through this with my 7-year-old every day. Like, if I try and throw all word book at him, he's just like, where are the pictures? What am I supposed to do with this? One
Sad.
of the
Reminiscent of this from the transition in 2016, when he divested from all of his businesses.
Right. That was when he supposedly divested from all of his businesses, brought up just manila folders. They are really good with the visuals. Like, this is a business pile, but this is not medical. It's paper. It's paper.
He's basically a prop comic.
Exactly. And not that funny.
Most aren't.
This is fun. This is we've edited this down. This is Mitch McConnell and Brett Baer on Fox News. Mitch McConnell's been going around saying there was no plan. And the Trump administration was saying there was no plan. Of course, like we just saw in that last clip, they came out and said, well, there was a plan, but it wasn't in a 3-ring binder, so we couldn't read it. It was in just a paper packet. If you just staple stuff, nobody pays attention to that. Here's Mitch McConnell after Rick Bright's testimony This is the guy who got fired from, is it Darba or Barda? And McConnell has to basically apologize. And that makes him look weak.
Dr. Bright is up testifying in the House today, saying that the administration was woefully prepared, says it's still not prepared.
Those plans have been in place, and it's disappointing they were not pulled out in January of this year and followed. They were not put on the table with a strong leader indicating these are our plans. Everyone fall in line and follow through with this plan.
You said that the previous administration didn't leave a plan. They pushed back against that.
I was wrong. They did leave behind a plan, so I clearly made a mistake in that regard. As to whether or not the plan was followed and who's the critic and all the rest, I don't have any observation about that because I don't know enough about the details of that, Brett, to comment on it in any detail.
Wow. Right? Backing up. Where do I have that sound on my thing? Do I not? I don't know what happened. I had a backing up beep, beep, beep thing. Beep, 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 beep. McConnell has left the building. I wonder what that's about. That's definitely like leaving a little sliver open, isn't it? I wonder if there's some fear amongst some of these Republicans that like we are headed into the iceberg. Like everybody's trying to pretend there's no iceberg out there. And we're hitting it. We don't know. Are we going to hit it in June? Might be. Maybe we don't hit it until 3 or 4 months from now. But let's be clear. You know, the epidemiologists I've spoken to on this program has said 6 months out is when you get the second peak. But for a lot of places in this country, maybe the vast majority of them, well, certainly the vast majority, but maybe all of them, except for like New York and New Jersey, maybe in Massachusetts, they haven't necessarily hit their first peak yet. And maybe some Republican senators are starting to get a little worried about that. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Mitch McConnell does have pretty good political instincts. So
he certainly knows like there could be a little bit of like, I'm hedging my bets. Here's Donald Trump. One of the things that people say is really important if you're going to, well, I mean, be as incredibly irresponsible as we're being in terms of like going out there and, you know, opening up bars. Thing in New York is in New York City now, like you can, it's like you can walk and carry with drinks from some of these bars. I don't know if you're aware of that, Jamie.
Oh, I'm aware.
It's awesome.
Got to keep that on the board afterwards.
And, but one of the things that people say we desperately need is the ability to test and then to track. Now, I don't know what Donald Trump thinks he's doing. I mean, I think he generally is just like, actually, this is like one of those things where it makes you feel like he's absolutely crazy, right? Because what is the political value of saying that there is no value to testing? But here's Donald Trump saying that we've got great testing, but really doesn't matter.
And we have the best test. We have tests that 2 months ago didn't even exist. Or great companies came up with things, Abbott Laboratories and so many others. They came up with things at Roche. They came up with things that nobody even believes. So we have the best testing in the world. It could be the testing's, frankly, overrated. Maybe it is overrated. But whatever they start yelling, we want more, we want more. You know, they always say, we want more, because they don't want to give you credit. Then we do more, and they say, we want more. But we have the greatest testing in the world. But what we want is we want to get...
I mean, it's just the rantings of a lunatic. We have the greatest testings in the world. Here is Trump saying that if we did less testing, we would have less cases.
Don't forget, we have more cases than anybody in the world. But why? Because we do more testing. When you test, you have a case. When you test, you find something is wrong with people. If we didn't do any testing, we would have very few cases. They don't want to write that. It's common sense. So we test much more, many, many times. South Korea, you hear about. I spoke with the president of South Korea, spoke with many different presidents.
The deaths thing is also part of it. The deaths. That's also contributing to the notion that we have cases.
Yeah.
But this has been,
maybe the refrigerated truck morgues that I see every time I go for a walk in my neighborhood.
That might be part of it,
give me
too.
some sense of it.
The amazing thing is that is the Trump strategy in a nutshell. If we don't have evidence of the existence of this, there's no way for people to know about it. And by they, he's just talking about general, like, and to some extent, that's true, right? I mean, like the Bush administration tried to hide pictures of caskets coming home from Iraq. Part of that was to sort of make it impossible for the story and the consciousness that people have about it to go forward. But, you know, if what science suggests could very well happen in a lot of these states, you're not going to need to have awareness as a function of people complaining or media stories about it. People are going to know people. Like people in New York, everybody knows somebody who has died or knows somebody who has died. Yep. I have school friends of Saul's whose family members have died. I have family friends of my family who have died. Friends of friends who have died. And that is not a dynamic that exists around the country. And at one point it might, at least in some places.
Yeah. I think maybe it was yesterday we got some crazy statistic about the number of tests per capita that they have in South Korea is like many magnitudes more than the US.
Well, the bottom line is they also didn't need to deploy these tests because they stopped it so early. You know, like by testing early, they were able to contain the virus. And therefore, they had just less cases, and the needs for testing became less. In China right now, they're doing 11 million tests in 10 days.
Well, that's what Romney was pointing out yesterday, that somebody is saying like we're doing as many tests per capita as South Korea, neglects to highlight the fact that South Korea got theirs under control. So it's like, well, we spilled milk. Well, we used way like more paper towels in South Korea. It's like, yeah, we had a much bigger mess. So we had to test a lot more, basically.
Now, one of the things that's unclear at this point in terms of like what's happening with the Senate investigation of Richard Burr. Did I call him Alexander Burr the other day? Richard Burr. Richard Burr got caught basically doing a version of insider trading because he got information via the Intel Committee that we were going to be facing a pandemic. He thought it was relevant enough to actually take some financial moves, as opposed to, let's say, the president, who thought, like, we don't need to buy any PPE. The FBI crashed his, got a warrant for his phone, and it's basically investigating him. Pretty serious thing to do for a standing senator or sitting senator. He has now relinquished his chairmanship of the Intelligence Committee, at least temporarily. I have a feeling that's going to be permanent. Now, the question is like, why is Burr, who has been a bit of a critic of Donald Trump's, I don't know if critic is really the right word, he's been less vocal with his praise than, say, someone like Kelly Loeffler, who has been more vocal with his praise and is Trump's pick to be senator in Georgia, getting investigated when she is not, when she clearly, the record shows she did the same thing. Here is Trump denying that he talked to anyone at the DOJ regarding Richard Burr stepping down from the Senate Intelligence Chairmanship.
All right, any other questions?
Chairman Burr just announced he's stepping down. Your reaction?
Who is stepping?
Chairman Burr, Senator Burr, the man who's...
He announced he's stepping down?
Temporarily.
I didn't know that, no.
Have you ever discussed the investigation into Senator Burr with anyone at the Justice Department?
No, I never have. No, I didn't know. When did he announce he's stepping down?
A short time ago, temporarily from his chairmanship.
I know nothing about it. Nothing about it. No, I never discussed it with anybody. That's too bad. That's too bad.
Do you buy that?
He's a great liar, but he's very bad at acting surprised.
Right. What? When did that happen?
No, I hadn't heard that at all. No.
Did that happen a long time ago? I haven't been reading the papers. I've been so busy with the coronavirus. I mean, there is a report now that the FBI is looking into Loeffler's documents. But
she's also not the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee and just ran, however long an investigation into Russian interference.
Right. And look, I mean, does Bill Barr really need to get the word from President Trump? I mean, we know how this works, right?
Yeah, he knows what the boss wants.
I've mentioned that I had a buddy who worked for a billionaire recently. He's like one of his like lieutenants. And he had said to me, I know you think it's bad, like what goes on, but it's worse than that. And he said, all these guys around this billionaire, there's half a dozen of them. Their whole job is essentially to anticipate what this billionaire is going to want or what he doesn't want or what he dislikes and what he likes. And they go and do it. They don't need direction. And they come back and they say, I've done this. I mean, here's the thing. If I had a squad of people who were doing that and, Brendan went out there and was like, oh, I changed the backdrop to, purple on all our videos or whatever it is. And I'd be like, dude, I don't have that kind of margin of error. That's horrible. It ruined all our videos. But you're a billionaire. You have you lost it to $15-20 million. That sucks, but you're just fired. It's not like I don't need to go out of my way to make sure that mistake is not made. I just over time develop a team of people who keep doing positive things for me. And that's what Donald Trump does. He just people, you're doing the right thing. Good. I mean, because look, he's gone through so many people that he's fired. He clearly never gives explicit directions. He wants them to figure it out based upon his public proclamations and an activity. And when they don't, he fires them, which is why he's gone through so many people. But Bill Barr is going to be there forever. Stephen Miller is going to be there forever, presuming his wife hasn't infected him, because they just keep doing things that Trump likes and they don't mess up. And that's the way it works. So he never has to be explicit about this stuff. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Loeffler. That's going to be pretty important, I guess. This doesn't seem like a great strategy by Joe Biden. He was on Lawrence O'Donnell's program last night. I mean, I guess who is this? Jay, listen to what Joe Biden says here. I'm curious who you think this is. Who his target audience is here.
What do you say to women who were ready to vote for Joe Biden, eager to vote for Joe Biden, but this gives them serious pause because they do believe Tara Reade, and you're not going to change their mind about that? What would you say to them about their vote?
Well, I think they should vote their heart. And if they believe Tara Reade, they probably shouldn't vote for me. I wouldn't vote for me if I believed Tara Reade. The fact is that look at Tara Reade's story. It changes considerably. And so, but I don't want to question her motive. I don't want to question anything other than to say the truth matters. This is being vetted. It's been vetted. They went and people interviewed scores of my employees over my whole career. This is just totally, thoroughly, completely out of character. And the idea that in a public place, in a hallway, I would assault a woman. I mean, it's just, I mean, right? Anyway, I promise you, it never happened. It should be vetted. She should be thoroughly looked at. And whether or not these happen, look at the story, follow the storyline, and determine whether there's any truth to it. And there is no truth to it, I promise you.
You know, it's not too late for the Democrats to replace him. I know that they're not going to, but they could if they wanted.
Well, who's they in that instance?
The DNC.
You be okay with the DNC replacing him at this point?
I'm not okay with any of it. So
right. No, I know, but
hard
I'm saying,
to say, really.
Do you really want to set that precedent of the DNC being able to
yeah.
switch
I mean,
out?
they do whatever they want all the time anyway. So,
well, it's like as a Democrat and thinking democracy is important. Joe Biden won the most votes in the primary, so like I have a problem with that. As an anti-fascist who wants to make sure we beat Trump, I hope we beat Trump. But yeah, I don't think practically. I mean, Biden will have to make this choice on his own, and I think very clearly he's not going to, because this was the way he approached a whole. Like he said, it's about Sanders voters, vote for somebody else. It didn't seem to hurt him a whole lot.
Yeah, that's what I'm more interested in. I mean, I think look, I think I don't want to set any type of precedent with the DNC based upon an accusation that we don't really have the ability to establish, is given permission to remove the candidate. I would like him to resign, but I don't think that's going to happen. But with that said, I'm just curious more about the tact of if somebody believes Tara Reade, they shouldn't vote for me. That to me, I mean, he's in a, let's just assess this from a political standpoint. He's in a tough position because he doesn't want to minimize the accusation. Let's just give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that he didn't do it. I happen to think that, if I had to guess, I happen to think that it happened. And, but give him the benefit of the doubt for the sake of the political analysis. He doesn't want to say, you should vote for me anyways, because he want to make it seem like he's minimizing the that act. On the other hand, saying like don't vote for me is minimizing the harm reduction here.
Oh, well, he didn't have to say, if you believe her, don't vote for me, but he did have to double down on his denial, which is what he's doing here. And like Matt said, he responds the same way when anyone gives him any other kind of criticism. He's like, fine, vote for Trump then. Like, right. He is not un-Trump-like on that level.
Yeah, I mean, he's leveraging the fact that the only reason why people, not the only reason, but the vast majority of people, a huge percentage of his sitting there as a nominee is a function of people thinking like Trump is worse. He is the most benign, I guess the least disruptive candidate that could beat Trump, I think was the calculation. I mean, I suppose he could have said something like, look, I people have to follow their heart, period, and end it there in terms of whether they will vote or not for him. But I don't know, when you qualify, like when you as a denial say that I did that in a public stairway, that to me is also, I mean, look,
also, that is not the story. He can't remember even what Tara Reade's story is. This happened in his office, right?
No, it was in a stairway.
In a hallway? Okay, never mind.
But that to me sounds also like that's a weak defense. I think the defense to something like this is like, I would never do that under any circumstances. To me, again, I feel fairly confident that in that era, for a senator of that age, that he thought that he was being, I don't want to say polite, but that he thought that he was being upstanding by saying, when she said no, he backed off and said, you're okay. Okay, fine. You're not that important to me anyways. Don't worry about it. Like, he walked away from that going like, I'm a good man. She said no, and I took no for an answer. And I honestly believe that is what, if it happened, that is how it went down in his head. I hope people aren't taking this as me trying to diminish the severity or the disgustingness of that. But that is what I think, having been, in my, I guess, early 20s at that time, like what the attitude of a guy that age who was senator would have been. And who knows? But, and I think that, like, I've heard of, I certainly at that time heard of people like doing, hitting on people who they thought was into him. Like he was, under the impression, according to her, that she was into him, that was like an appropriate first move. And
Donald Trump literally said, grab him by the pussy in 2016, right? Like, this is the culture.
Yeah.
It's a disease. And also, I changed my mind. I remember saying that maybe he doesn't even remember it. Maybe he doesn't remember her. He seems like he's lying. I'm sorry. And he has a long, long history of lying, including very recently lies that have been debunked on the record. And if you're going to look at the survivor's credibility in this instance, I think it makes sense to look at his credibility too.
I agree, but we'll see. Here is, this is fascinating. Mike Braun, Republican from Indiana. This is the guy who beat Andrew Donnelly, right? Brian Donnelly? I can't remember any names. I knew an Andrew Donnelly. I think it's Brian Donnelly from Indiana. And here he is. Schumer wants to release, and this is just appalling, wants to release the CDC guidelines for reopening, as if you would rely on the primary source of information about infectious diseases as to what the guidelines, the standards should be when we open up and go out into the public during a pandemic. Schumer had a resolution to promote that. Mike Braun thinks that, like, that's a no.
The inability to conduct early and wide testing in the U.S., caused by the CDC's and FDA's overly prescriptive stodginess, prolonged the testing process in the early stages when it should have been expedited. The result has been that one size fits all that we're contending with currently. We now lead the world in testing, thanks to the White House's efforts to fight off the regulatory swamp at the CDC and fix the testing problems caused by regulators. I submitted to the record yesterday in that over 2-hour briefing with the healthcare experts that timeline, refer to it. It happened from late January through early March. Senator Schumer wants to release the CDC's version of the reopening guidance, but the White House and senior health officials have rejected the initial CDC recommendations in that version because the recommendations were overly prescriptive, infringed upon religious rights, and risked further damaging the economy. Are we really going to let the CDC shutter the economy a second time, like they did with testing, by dictating overly prescriptive guidelines? President Trump's deregulatory agenda has proven to be an immediate success because we have gone from initially mired in bureaucratic hurdles to leading the world in testing and successfully flattening the curve and fighting the virus. Spoke to a CEO of a pharmaceutical company headquartered in Indiana, said the very same thing. They were stymied from the get-go. He, among other pharmaceutical companies, have put together an entrepreneurial effort to tackle this. It's not going to be done by trying to tie their hands. They're close to getting testing to where it's going to work for all of us. I have a business 3 of my 4 kids run. We want to make sure we have testing to make sure that we can bring employees into a healthy environment and take care of customers. All businesses share that concern.
Well, first off, he's lying about the CDC screwed up the test early on. But the fact of the matter is that we could have just taken the German tests from day one but the administration blocked that because they wanted to make this an entrepreneurial endeavor. The job number one is allow my friends to profit. Job number two is get the testing out. And the idea that the problems that we had in deploying these things was a regulatory one, as opposed to simply a political choice that Donald Trump was making out of corruption, is just absurd. And the idea that we should allow medical guidelines to be overrun by the notion of religious freedom. I mean, are we going to basically say that no, we don't have to have vaccinations if for people, period? I mean, it's just absurd. I mean, like these.
And we've heard widely reported issues with the tests that are available.
And now the test that we have, like the one, the instant one that they take at the White House, apparently it's 50% accurate.
Hey, 1 out of 2 ain't bad.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because 50% of the time it works every time.
Well, we got 1 Miller right, 1 Miller wrong. So fine. All right, let's take some IMs. We got to get out of here. Folks, I'm sorry we're not going to have any time for any more phone calls. Apologies. Sam Asbane. Yes, Mr. Rubin. I was wondering what would break first, your spirit or your body. Oh, did you guys talk about that somebody ripped off his gift about his book or something yesterday?
Again. I texted that to you guys last night from his ring, the photo of the guy who stole his gift from friends of his.
Yeah,
I have
what
no
happened?
idea what you're talking about.
Oh, is that what it was? He has a ring in his gated house,
Yeah.
and somebody stole his package.
Yeah, some thug stole a gift to him, and he posted it.
We should have that shoplifting caller back on to talk about stealing from Dave Rubin.
Call him Sarah.
That's true. The Diaz Stephen, Thaddeus Stephen. Sam, what do you think about having some rich liberals pay for a few 100,000 people to move to Wyoming to gain Senate seats? Worked for abolitionists in the 1850s to flip Texas. I mean,
We've been
Kansas.
talking about this with
I've heard New Hampshire is an important state to go to, and Maine, to make sure that those states, because they're trending a little bit red, because there was actually an active campaign by libertarians to move to New Hampshire to make that state more conservative. But then, yes, I would say Wyoming. I mean, I have a feeling COVID-19 may, in fact, do something to that effect. That may be the way to get the Senate to be more democratic, not small and big D. I mean, maybe that would be, Tom Steyer should do like a 40 acres and a mule type of thing.
That's the scary thing about this virus and its relationship to the Senate, and how the Senate is basically like a stand-in for land, because you have that's the worst possible time for empty space to have be overrepresented in Congress is when it's like a disease is hurting concentrated areas.
Yeah, we need like a millennial homesteader act for
exactly
these underpopulated states.
All right, here's
knock yourselves out.
Well, we're not all going to go, Jimmy. Cave Dweller, do you think Biden requesting that Stacey Abrams be on O'Donnell with him last night is an indication she is going to be his VP pick? The whole segment seemed pretty odd to me. My first reaction to that is that means she's not going to be his pick. Because what you want to do if you're Joe Biden, broadly speaking, and this is why he was floating her name at the beginning of the campaign, is you want the perception that you are open to picking her. You want some of the credit with her constituency that you would pick her. And so if he's going out and making a public show of like having her join him in this way, my guess is that's an indication that they probably won't pick her. But it's also could be just one of those things where like, we're going to do we have 5 or 6 people that we want to pick. We're not sure who it is. We're going to promote all of them so we get some benefit from people that, he considered her. It just maybe there's something that didn't work out or whatever, who knows, but it's not off the table for him. And so I think that's what that's about.
At least she's involved this time.
Oh, yes. Yeah. There's consent in this instance.
Yeah, maybe he's learning.
Joyce from PA, shout out to Mount Leck for the Napoleon-esque feathering on his hair. All right. Arca, I don't know what that means. Arcadem, Sam, and majority reporters. Folks, just want to urge some caution when speaking about COVID-19 antibodies and immunity. Coronaviruses are not like smallpox. Smallpox provides lifelong immunity to those who survive the disease. Both innate and adaptive or memory immunity are involved. There's almost no evidence on the immune response and significance of antibody generation in this particular coronavirus. Other coronaviruses we've studied provide very limited duration of immunity to reinfection. In other words, having survived COVID-19 might not give you immunity to the reoccurrence of the disease. And if it does, it might not last more than a few months. This means that we have absolutely no idea if herd immunity is even possible. The FDA has also fast-tracked over 100 antibody tests, which may give many false sense of security. Some children may be fighting off this coronaviruses without developing specific antibodies at all. Others may generate antibodies, but still be susceptible to reinfection. We just don't know enough. Thank you. I mean, that's basically the story with all of it. We think it's much harder for you to catch it outside, particularly if you're wearing a mask and you're 6 feet away. Bullprog. If kids got less homework, they get less Fs. That's true. Leninade. Hey, Sam, I'm a California state worker, and I'd like to give you my opinion on cuts we're facing. 562 area code. Sorry, we'll get to you on Monday. Jens, Bill Barr isn't working for Trump. He's working for Barr. He has seized the perfect opportunity to force an authoritarian policy. By coincidence, he can serve Trump and undermine democracy at the same time. What Wisco Lefty? Apparently in my rural area, a lot of people think it's a great idea to pack themselves into a bar. No masks, no social distancing, probably a fair amount of out-of-towners. We're right on the county line, and the county next to us extended the safer at home order.
How much fun could you have at a bar that's not in Brooklyn anyway, really?
D Maxim J. Again, who is they? Like you don't know. Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Talk about the Democrats. Every time I'm like, the Democrats, and you're like, who do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, the Democratic voters who are registered Democrats could turn around and say, we don't want Joe Biden, and they could all vote for Bernie Sanders in New York. I mean, if in New York State, the Democrats voted for Bernie Sanders, or if they had done that in the last primary, I can't even remember where it was. The fact is that all of a sudden it would start becoming a major question. Are Democrats saying that they've heard this Tara Reade stuff and they don't want him anymore? That would put incredible pressure on him. So let's be clear here. The people who are not, like the DNC, there are provisions where they theoretically could knock him out of the box once he's the nominee, right? He's not officially the nominee yet. But right now, Democrats in New York State could vote for Bernie Sanders, who will be on the ballot, or I think, I can't even remember his name now. And if the vote was even 60-40, 55-45 for Bernie over Biden, this would be a very different conversation.
Okay, but just to get really pedantic with it, I would never refer to those people as the Democrats. I would drop the article, right? I just call them voters.
Be the only
Democratic voters, Democrats.
They're registered as Democrats.
No, come on.
With this current situation where, like Sam said, most of the Democratic voters don't want to send Biden packing, the only real part of the Democratic establishment that could make Joe drop out is probably Obama. And that's not going to happen. Right. Okay, maybe we should put all the left's energy into trying to convince Obama to kick Joe Biden off the ticket. Good luck with that.
Isn't this always what you're saying the superdelegates are for?
But the superdelegates are anti-democratic.
Yeah, they're not going to do it. But it still makes sense to register.
I do think there should be a provision that exists in the Democratic Party where there is some mechanism. I use the example of people actually being indicted, and something that's like clearly and frankly after but that's after that's in the convention. But even after the convention, I think there needs to be a mechanism where if you have somebody who's indicted and all of a sudden all of the Democratic Party, for that matter, and the country's perspective on that candidate flips, then I think we should have a mechanism. I don't know what the mechanism is, but I think if there, but we don't. I mean, the problem right now with Joe Biden is not that the DNC is not taking him off the ticket. The problem is that the Democrats, or everybody who's registered as a Democrat, I don't know.
It's not the Democrats.
Well, we could get into the ease of but everybody who voted as a Democrat for Joe Biden, they still want him. That's the problem. And the Democrats in New York State, like I say, not the DNC in the New York State, because there is no DNC in New York State, but there are Democrats. Those Democrats, they're going to vote for Joe Biden, I think. Not me. I'm not.
Well, I think people are resigned to the outcome. I mean,
that's just a choice that they're making.
I don't like it, and I'm still pretty resigned to it at this point. I'm still going to vote absentee for Bernie, but the idea that anything could change in the next few months on that front is kind of ridiculous. But it still makes sense to register the thing that they could do that they're not doing.
Right. But I think it's also fair to register the thing that Democratic voters are also not doing that they could do.
As a result of the signals that they have gotten from
a
party and the media. They're not, this isn't an active choice on their part.
I totally think
I mean, come on.
The hate to make.
At what point, yes, I get the idea that the party's not having a freak out about it, and that broadly the media is not out there. But I mean, even when they do polling and they show, when they sit down and they show people, Biden's denial, they're like, yeah, I'm still for Biden.
Yeah, because they think he's the only option, and he probably is in this current reality that we have.
Yeah, that's why I think
poll answers, those opinions were not created in a vacuum.
That's why I think if you want to make hay out of this, you should get I'm pissed that the Democratic Party for the second general election in a row has lined up behind a terrible candidate.
Yeah,
and they just did it differently this time. But as it stands now, there's first of all, the DNC can't do this. Actually, they don't actually have the power to do this. Joe Biden and Barack Obama are really the only two people that could move this right now, and they're not going to move it in a way we like. Probably. I mean, I honestly think the only way Biden is not on the ticket is if he cites some sort of health concern and goes away before the convention. Right. But I think I just think it's it's wishful thinking to think he's not going to be.
There are people out there who are not, who are just, they're not extremely wealthy. They are not particularly powerful. And there's a lot of them out there who voted for Joe Biden who would have every right in the world to be enraged if the DNC stepped in and took Joe Biden out at this point.
See, I don't know that they would really care, because they weren't really voting for Joe Biden. They were voting for the Democratic Party's leadership and what it wants.
Jamie, I really think that, listen, you're disregarding the agency of literally millions of people without, I don't know, contact people in South Carolina, go look at some surveys. I think that's unfair, because you're basically saying all these sheep, they don't know what they're doing, even when they decide to listen to to Clyburn. I wouldn't have, but when you're saying that these sheep listen to Clyburn and so they voted for, they don't care about that. Well, they cared enough to vote for him in the first place.
I don't think that it makes you a sheep to look at the current reality that you have and all of the things that you've been taught and all the signals you're getting, and make a decision based on that you think is going to protect your interests. I don't think that makes you a sheep.
Well, then, but what makes you think that they're going to be not going to be pissed if the DNC removes Joe Biden?
I mean, some people would be probably, but I think part of what went into the decision to vote for Joe Biden for a lot of people wasn't because they were really excited about Joe Biden. They were like, I trust the Democratic Party, and this is the path that they've created. So I'm going to be with them on that.
Yeah, I think there was a significant percentage, I don't know, maybe 30, maybe 40% of the people who voted for Joe Biden, at least, who wanted Joe Biden. And you can
because
argue,
of Obama, maybe too, but that still exists.
Yeah,
I
like
think
who's,
you could
who's
argue,
excited about Joe Biden?
You could,
I mean, people that know. There's plenty of people who looked at 2016 and wish Biden ran because they thought Obama's guy would have beat Trump. Those people, they put Biden over the top this primary.
And the point is, all I'm making is that if you were to call for the DNC to disenfranchise them, they would have every right to be extremely mad. They're not going to say like, oh, well, the DNC did this. I realize now the veil has fallen from my eyes. I realize it was just manufactured consent anyways. And so I don't care.
I mean, don't you think at least some of those people would care that he's been credibly accused of sexual assault?
I've seen the polling. I mean, yes, some do, but it's like not many.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't really the hill that I want to die on. I think the left's focus should be elsewhere right now in terms of building up a social movement and the kinds of working class institutions, labor power, other kinds of popular resistance that would eventually probably trickle up into the electoral sphere, but also have all kinds of other effects. So
I'm okay with that as well. I'm down with that.
Alex Perrine wrote a long article on how it's not too late to replace Joe Biden. So that's kind of got in my ear a little bit.
Oh, listen, I think it's definitely not too late to replace Joe Biden, but I really do think there needs to be the consent of the voters. Unless he steps down himself. Personal herd immunity. My incredibly brave and strong Democratic Congressman Ben McAdams of Utah 4th is opposing the HEROES Act because he spends too much money and isn't bipartisan enough in getting people back to work. Great all around, Dem and Dem leadership. Yeesh. Anti-shoplifting. Shoplifting is bad. Not funny to joke about, Matt. The one exception is stealing Dave Rubin's book from every store possible. Jay Chivone. Truckers disrupt Rose Garden thing. He claimed they were supporting him by blasting their horns nonsense. Oh, let's play that for tomorrow. I mean, on Monday. The other Biden, he mentions it was a public place to emphasize that it would be pretty unlikely for people not to notice. I think that's the only reason he mentioned it. Desperate Koala, HH, Empire Burlesque. Jesus, Sam, stop the obtuseness. No one is disregarding anyone's agency. I'm sorry. I think that's what was happening. I don't think I'm being obtuse. You just don't like what the argument I'm making. That's all. You're being obtuse.
We have slightly different understandings of, I think, agency, ideology, but all of this complicated
it's 307
stuff.
on a Friday.
My point is just they will be angry, and they have every right to be angry if the DNC was to step in and push this. I don't think that they lacked the agency or their consent was manufactured enough that they could go out and vote for Biden, and then the DNC says we're going to take him out because of this accusation, that they'd be like, oh, well, as long as the DNC says that, they'll be okay. I think they're going to be mad.
I think even if it was Warren, take Warren, for instance, I think a lot of those people would be like, really? You're going to replace that guy with Warren? I think, yeah, there would be a lot more people then have shown that they are going to change their vote because of the Tara Reade story.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we're never going to find out. So maybe it's
true.
A moot point.
All right. And the final IM of the week. Really stretched it out today. Oh, geez. 308. Bang, bang, Bart. If everyone at MR is 100% of the opinion that a Trump second term is an existential threat and the worst possible outcome, then how come none of you are willing to phone bank for Biden? I may very well do that, ultimately.
Last I checked, the Biden dialer was broken anyway.
Yeah, Biden's earned my vote. He hasn't earned my labor or my voice or me shutting up about him. That's my stance right now.
I won't shut up about him, but I may.
None of us will shut up about him.
All right, folks. Guys, thank you very much. Great week. Another great week of coronavirus programming. See you on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know